like 8th,
May
right?
9th.
Yes.
May 8th.
May 8th, yeah.
And 2 weeks later,
1944.
1944, June 8th, D-Day,
June the 6th.
June 6th,
That
D-Day,
was Tuesday.
Tuesday. And I'm just wondering what you were doing in that time span between when your surgery was over and the liberation.
Well, I went back to my apartment and went back to the hospital several times to have the dressing changed, and just kept being in touch with my friends from the movement, the underground movement, and by that time we already had an inkling that something will happen, because the coded messages came to us that we had to translate into real French. You know, they were the messages were sentences that were non sequiturs. In fact, there was all this disjointed, but we had to. For instance, there was one that we got to in that period, and I described that in the book, and it says, grandmother is riding on her bicycle 3 times around the barn. We didn't know what that meant, but that had to be translated, decoded into what it really meant. Or, after the rain, the sun will shine, whatever that meant. Or, the rabbit has laid 3 eggs.
Where were these messages coming?
They came over the radio, over the communication system with the underground. And these messages were coded messages, like I said, doesn't make sense.
Right.
The rabbit has just laid 3 eggs.
Right.
Or the grandmother is cycling, or whatever these things mean. But it had to be and so we were active. And of course it was still wartime. And as I said, I was 17 days in the hospital, and then between my release from the hospital on May 25th to June the 6th, I was just back in my apartment.
So, let's recap. How old were you at this point?
At that point, 23.
23 years old. Okay, so I'm going to skip to the good part. So D-Day came,
Yes.
and what did you do next? What happened? Anything different?
Well, there was one scene that's still during the war. It's still not back in the present time, or after the war. On Saturday, June the 10th, I was assigned to take a pack of IDs, some documents, to a town near Limoges, a little town called Oradour. I don't know if you have heard of the tragedy of Oradour. Oradour near Limoges, Oradour on the Glane River. I was getting this assignment to take these documents to Oradour, where some people were hiding, Jewish people were hiding.
Mm-hmm.
A friend with whom I lodged in Limoges, Eugene, he also got a package to take into the same area, but he went a few stations further because his mother lived in that town. At the same time, he wanted to visit his mother, who was in hiding.
Mm-hmm.
He went there. I was supposed to go to Oradour. On the way to Oradour, alongside the railroad track was a country road. And on that country road, a detachment of German tanks and armored cars were advancing into the same direction, stirring up all that dust on that country road. And a farmer was sitting next to me. And he said, you know what? When they're going into this direction, we shouldn't go into that same direction.
So where'd you go?
And he added, especially after what happened yesterday in Tulle, Tulle, that was another town nearby where 91 men were being hanged from lampposts because they found out that there was resistance in the town. That German detachment did that. We didn't know at the time that was the German detachment, but he says, after what happened in Tulle yesterday, the news had already reached us. We don't want to go where they're going. The next stop, that was a stop before Oradour, he and I got off. Everybody that got off at that train station in Oradour on that day became a victim. because the whole Oradour of town of Oradour was burned down. Between 600, 700, and 900 people, something, we don't know the exact amount. But the women taken into the church with the children, straw and dry branches around the church, they burned down the church. The children, women could not escape. This was not Jewish people, this was the town people of Oradour. The mayor was killed. The mayor said, don't, and the son said, don't do that to my father, do it to us. They killed him anyway. And everybody got off that train, who would have gotten off at that train, maybe 5 or 6 or 10 people, who knows, became victims as they arrived at the station. I was the luckiest guy that got off. Another sort of escape. My friend Eugene was shot by the German detachment in the railroad station of Saint-Junien. When he got out of the train, got into the train station, and the Germans got in there, they inspected his rucksack and found false ID cards. 2 shots in the head.
Oh my God.
Eugene never came back that night to my apartment, and the landlady and I were sitting there, sadly, learning what had happened in Oradour on that day. Oradour, June the 10th, 1944, Saturday. Look that up in Google. Oradour. And then slash sur, S-U-R, means on the, another slash, G-L-A-N-E, sur Glane, on the Glane River. And why do I say that? Because there was another Oradour nearby with another surname, Surver. That's another little river. The Germans made a mistake. They thought it was this Oradour that had the resistance fighters, or a cell of resistance. It was the other Oradour that had it, and they made a mistake. And they did that in reprisals. They thought this was a town harboring resistance. So that was another one where I escaped pretty much. And Jeanne d'Arc later told me, when I met her in '99, you know, a couple of people from Oradour were brought to the Limoges hospital. Some of them couldn't save, others we could. But the fact remains that that was another tenuous moment.
So, wow, you're really good at premeditating things. So you found out you're in your apartment, you found out about Eugene.
Eugene's gone.
Yeah.
He was murdered.
And then what? You had the IDs, right?
Well, I had the IDs I had with me, and I could just never deliver him, and not only that, it wouldn't have mattered anymore, right, because the people that I was going to deliver him to, they were all dead.
Right.
And then if you go to Oradour today, in fact, where the church used to be, there is now a display, almost like a holy place, you know, for meditation. A table is there with all the mementos, baby carriages, dolls, little shoes, dresses that the kids wore, and clothing. That's there displayed. And the town of Oradour, which was burned down, has been built up like a quarter of a mile further down and has been erected again as another town. But that is remaining there now as a place of memorialization.
Oh, I didn't know that about the Germans.
That is near Limoges, yes.
So after that came
The
D-Day.
landing.
The landing, and what happened? What was that like?
Well, it was euphoria, you know. When you hear the landing took place, that was the beginning of the end. The beast will finally be taken care of.
Right.
But that was June 1944, but the deportations in France still continued till the fall in other areas. Well, Limoges was liberated sometime in July or August, just like Paris. Paris was liberated on August the 25th, 1944. And we just waited for Limoges to be liberated, and then when that happened, the Germans who were captured, the day before they were the masters, and the day after when they were captured, they walked around with their hands up, you know, like little frightened kids, you know. These Germans, some of them were not older than I. Some of them were 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever. But these were all young kids thrown into the battle, and when they were captured, they were prisoners. and had to submit to new rules. They were no longer the masters. But that's what happened. Limoges were later liberated, and I was in Limoges when the war ended in 1945.
Did you associate the war ending with the end of like the Holocaust and everything?
Actually not. First of all, when the landing took place, there was euphoria, there was joy, excitement, but there was always the thought, what will happen next? How will it end finally? Because there was just a landing. They still had to go through France and into Germany. But when the war ended in 1945, it was good that we knew it was ended, but it was all tempered with the uncertainty of what had happened to my family.
Right.
I still wanted to know what had happened to my family. And being that I hadn't heard, the last time I'd heard from them by letter was in the spring of 1942. That was already 2 years later. I could not take a guess, I couldn't venture a guess, I could just hope that what the rumors told us, or what we've already found out, that there were death camps, that they may have survived, but until I would hear, there was still the question, there were still the doubts, still the emotions of not knowing what really happened, the truth, you know.
When did you begin inquiring about your family?
Well, I've right after the war ended, I sent letters to the Red Cross, and my Aunt Erna, who survived in Paris, did the same thing. We wanted to know where they may have been taken, but what really happened to my mother and sisters, I didn't find out till 1962.
Right.
That was 15 years after I had come to this country.
So, I mean, just what was the date of the last concentration camp being liberated? You know?
No, they were you mean in Germany?
Yeah.
That was in May of 45.
That was also
May
okay.
of 45.
So, I know you moved to the United States, but what did you do before you moved to the
I
United
worked in a committee there, like Jewish Aid Committee. It was called COJASOR, COJASOR.
And
That was an acronym for Comité Juif d'Assistance Sociale et de Reconstruction. A Jewish Committee of Social Assistance and Reconstruction. That was for people who had come from camps or liberated from camps. And Komitee, ein Hilfskomitee. Sie verstehen, was Hilfe heißt.
Yeah.
Ein Hilfskomitee. An aid committee of aid. I worked for them.
in France.
In France, yes, in Limoges.
And this was for how many years did you?
That was from the end of the war till almost 2 years. Yeah, at least a year and a half. I worked already while the war was still going on, but Limoges had already been liberated, but they were still going on in the east, you know. Then there was the Battle of the Bulge in 44, but there was a counterattack by the Germans, again instilling a lot of fear that they might get back to Paris. But during that time, I worked in the committee like from August to September of 44 to the day when I left France in January of 47. About 2.5 years.
So where'd you go in 47? What happened?
To America.
America. And did anything significant happen while you were still in France? Any memories or any?
Well, in France I was visiting my aunt in Paris a lot. She would have wanted me to stay in Paris, but I didn't. And I also went to Belgium to visit the family Freiermauer, with whom I'd been living in hiding in France, and Annie Freiermauer, who was sort of my girlfriend, distant relative. Mm-hmm. But she was my girlfriend, and you'll find out in the book that Annie and I had a boyfriend-girlfriend relation.
We don't want to find out in the book, we want to know now.
What?
I said we don't want to find out in the book, we want to know now.
Well, nothing. Annie and I were just good friends, and when we were writing the book, when Michael started editing and adding his historic perspective into it. He said, tell me, what really went on between you and Annie? Tell it to me. He says, we got to put a little something in there for excitement. I said, there's plenty of excitement. He says, you know what you mean. You know what I mean. But then Flo was sitting here and she says, Michael, you want me to get out of the room? If Leo tells you, I said, well, you don't have to get out of the room. Then nothing happened because Annie and I were very good friends and we were boyfriends, girlfriends. But nothing would have happened. It was wartime and I was a little bit afraid of her father too, you know. That her father was a very domineering, strong-willed person, nice man, almost took me in like a son. So I wasn't going to disappoint him. But Annie and I had a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and I stayed in France. They returned to Belgium because Annie and Nettie, her sister, were born in Belgium. They were my friends in Belgium when I got there from Austria, and we lived in France in hiding all together as a group, and I went to Belgium for one reason, to say goodbye to the Vrijafmauer family. And at that time I found out that Annie was going to get engaged to some other fellow who was a friend of hers and also of mine when I lived in Belgium. We were a group of youngsters. And then said goodbye to the Vrijafmauers. In fact, on the 25th of October, I'm going to call her for her 85th birthday, Annie. And I just spoke to her the other day. She's going to Israel for a wedding of her granddaughter. And she had a sister Nettie, whom I called in September, and she had a birthday. So I'm keeping in touch with these people.
What was Annie's story during this time?
So Annie was hiding with her family, and then she went to a convent to hide out in Nice under also assumed name. We all had false IDs to be able to circulate. I had 3 different IDs, as you know. And then we were soulmates.
You both had a very similar story.
Yes, a mutual, common experience. You know, we were together when it was dangerous. We were together when we were hiding. We were together when we were scared, and it all creates a bond.
So, when you went to America in '47, did you want to take her with you, or what?
No, I wanted to go to America, and they wanted to stay in Belgium. So I went to America, and that was it. And then Annie got married later. So when I went back to visit her, she was married and visited the family.
Was that hard for you? Or?
No, it wasn't hard for me. I don't think it was hard for her. In fact, she got married before I even got married. So, but her mother would have liked me to go to Belgium and become involved with the family. They were all in the fur and diamond business. They had sort of put their minds to work. That would eventually happen, but it never did. You know, like so many other things that you plan, that just don't happen.
So, when you worked for, what was the name of the Jewish group that you worked for? I can't say the name.
You mean
The agency.
The agency, yeah.
the agency?
Yeah.
Cojasor. COJASOR. That is an acronym for Comité Juif.
So when you worked for Kojazar, did you see some did you hear some traumatic stories?
Well, I had an interesting story when I told you that when I escaped from that one train, I asked a man, would he run with me? Remember? Because he couldn't, because he had family. Well, I met him at that committee. When he was liberated from the camp, he went to do that construction work. And he went to a camp near Bordeaux, and I met him there. He came to that committee, in fact, to find about his family again, to be reunited, to Comité Juif Assistance Sociale, Social Assistance, and Reconstruction. And so I asked him, what happened? He says, we really went to a work detail, he says, but you know what Kaufman said? That Leo Bretholz, he told me he will run away. He told me that.
Kaufman, the German guard.
Yes, the French guard with the German accent.
right.
Yeah, he was from Lorraine, Alsace-Lorraine, and being that he had told me, today I'm guarding you, you're not running away, and I facetiously said, well, that has nothing to do with you, it depends on me. And he said to them, when he didn't find me, says, this fellow Bretholz told me he will run away. So if he accepted it as a mistake that he made, because he didn't guard us well enough. That was one thing, and the other thing was my friend Freddie Nola, with whom I arrived in the United States. We got our visa at the same time. His picture is in the book. Freddie and I, by the way, I'll meet him again. He's coming to New York in end of October, and I'll go there for a couple of days. Freddie came to Limoges because he had relatives there. He was liberated from Auschwitz-Buna. Buna was the Monowitz, that was the forced labor camp in Auschwitz. They worked forced labor in a chemical factory and for IG Farben factory, the German chemical concern, slave labor. And he survived a slave labor camp in Germany. Freddie was deported just like I from Transit and arrived in Auschwitz. He went to Buna Monowitz, survived, and then came to Limoges to rejoin some family, some cousins. And I met Freddie because he also came to that committee for aid. They gave him some funds, the HIAS did that. And no, American Joint Distribution Committee, not HIAS was involved in immigration, but the American Joint helped with funds. And Freddie came there, and finding out that he's also from Vienna, I said, where are you going to be going from here? He says, well, I have my two brothers live in America. I'm going to join them there. I said, well, I'm going to America too. And from that moment on, we just became friends in Limoges, and we went to Bordeaux together to get our visas, and we came over on the same boat. And that deals with now. And Freddie then came to New York and couldn't quite find a job quickly, so I asked him to come to Baltimore, and he came to Baltimore and worked for the same firm that I worked in the textile field.
Wow.
Then he met an English young woman that came here to visit an aunt, her mother's sister. They went on a blind date, and he got married in 51, and she took him back to England, and he lives in England. And I got married in 52. Yeah.
A quick question: Why America? What was your thought process? Was it
because I had my relatives here, my aunt, my father's two sisters and a brother.
So was it never?
And she made my aunt, Sophie, living in Baltimore, provided my affidavit of support. We needed an affidavit of support so that we can apply for the visa, all these procedures. I also had a certificate to go to Palestine.
Right.
I told you that.
Which was your original goal?
The original goal. But then when I figured that woman, distant relative with her two children, her husband was deported, she really had nowhere to go, and she had a brother or somebody, or some friend or something in Palestine. I transferred my certificate to her name. She went there, and I decided to come to America.
So, you get to America in 1947.
And here we are.
Yes, here we are.
What about the boat ride? I want to hear about that.
Yeah, what was the boat ride like? Was it
The what?
the boat ride?
Well, the boat ride was in January. It took 10 days. We left France on the 19th of January, arrived on the 29th. It was a rough ride, a rough crossing, stormy, until we got into the Gulf Stream. Then the sun started shining, and then became calm. But about 90% of the people in that boat were seasick, I included. And to go for the first time to the ocean when I was in Belgium, that's when I saw the ocean for the first time. Even stepping into the waves, I got a little seasick because of the motion. But that was a rough ride, 20 foot, 25 feet waves, and it went right over the rail, and we slept, many of us, not me, not everybody, but I did, and many others slept actually on deck, because in the cabins there was, the odor was, they used chemicals to clean the toilets and everything, the odor plus the movement, it was a little bit overwhelming. And a lot of people started also to throw up, like many others did. But then they suggested, why don't you go on deck? And I put on my coat, my my beret, my gloves, and slept on deck on a deck chair until the rough sea settled down into the Gulf Stream, and overnight, within an hour or two, the railing on the boat on deck, which was ice covered with icicles, within a couple of hours, it all melted down, and you had perfect sun. And then when we got towards the American coast, well, we had a reception committee, I call it, the seagulls. They come to meet the boat. You know why?
Why?
Because they
food
feed
to
on the
throw
scraps, the food that is being thrown overboard. So they accompany the ship into the harbor.
So you're in America, the land of the free. What were you associating America with? What did you think would happen in America? Why did you just want to get away from Europe after this?
I wanted to get away from Europe because Europe to me was a place of bad memories. A place where I just didn't want to stay.
Right.
And left Europe with a lot of trepidation, not still knowing what had happened to my mother and sisters. My aunt was in Paris. She says, I will find out for you what happened to your mother. That was her sister.
So you get to America, you don't know any English.
I know very little English. I know as much English as perhaps less than what Amber knows in German. She had 5 years of German. I had 2 years of English. So you know what high school English or any foreign language is.
Right.
That was my basic rudimentary knowledge. I could form a sentence. I had some vocabulary, a little bit of grammar, but to say that I knew English would be too much. But I had a basic knowledge. So much so that when I first looked for a job, and a fella was recommended someone to go somewhere, look, they may need somebody to work there, and I went there, and he needed somebody, yes, for maintenance. Well, maintenance means what? Helping out, fixing this, doing that. So I wanted to say, you probably need somebody who is handy, like with tools or whatever. Instead of handy, I said handsome. You see, that's the English language. I said, you need somebody who's handsome. I said, no, he said, no, handy. I said, oh, I'm sorry. He says, but you know, handsome doesn't hurt. He says, it's no drawback.
So
But it would be better you know how to handle tools, you know.
were you in New York at this point?
No, in Baltimore.
You just
Okay.
went
I arrived in New York, and my uncle and aunt picked me up and whisked me to Baltimore. And that's where I am since January of 1947, 60 years.
Okay, so you get to America, you're in with your aunt and uncle, you're in Baltimore, and what happens?
Culture shock,
Culture.
definitely culture shock.
And what explain that?
Well, culture shock, you come from one society to another. Number one, that same year that was already then in the fall of 47, not in the spring. But an awful thing happened a month after my arrival. My Uncle Jack, my Uncle Sam, we call him Jack in Yemen. My Uncle Sam Goldstein, who picked me up at the boat on the 29th of January, died in February. He was 43. He died in my arms.
Oh my God.
Uncle Sam came home from work, sat down to listen to the radio. It was snowing. He went outside and swept the sidewalk to keep the walk to the house ice-free. And sat down and took deep breath, like this. Then he went over to his desk drawer and took out a folder with some papers. I said, Uncle Sam, what are you looking at? He says, well, I just went to my insurance man a couple of weeks ago, and he increased my premium. And I took a medical examination that has everything to do to increase the premium. And everything was fine. but I just don't feel good. Can you imagine that? Because that, he got the insurance company, the insurance premium increased. To him was proof that he was, proof enough that he was in good health. So he took, sort of put two, he questioned it. Look at this, looked at the papers. And then he said, well, it's time to go down. He took his shower in the basement. It's time to go down and take a shower. So Uncle Sam, when you take a shower, do you really have to take a shower? You don't feel too good? Yes, it's a day's work. I said, if you take a shower, make sure it's lukewarm, not too cold, not too hot. Because I figured anything too much was shower. Uncle Sam collapsed in the shower and died. My other uncle and I, they lived together, one family upstairs, the other. We took Uncle Sam up the stairs to his bedroom. He lay down. He had to go to the John. We put him on the John. He called the doctor. Uncle Sam slumped and he was gone. He was 43. And that was a shock for me.
That's traumatizing.
That was a great, great shock for me to see. And the interesting thing is, I had seen so many miserable things during the war. But here, this one incident right in front of me. I should have been maybe inured to it, immune to it. You know. Well, one tragedy, another tragedy, but it was my uncle.
Right.
And it was in my arms.
Right.
And it was sudden.
And it was right after this.
Right after all this. That was not only the culture shock is naturally with all the things that you experience in a new surrounding. For instance, I didn't have a car in France. In America, most everybody has a car. So the first date that I had, the girl that I called, she gave me the address. And she says, what car are you riding? So she should know when I come to pick her up. I said, I haven't got a car. I'll be there by bus. Oh, you don't have a car? So jokingly, I said, if you can't walk, I call an ambulance. Jokingly. But that was all right with her. You know. So this is a little bit of a culture shock. But 3-4 months later, I had a car because I traveled for a firm. I worked for a firm and they sent me on the road to work for them, you know. A textile firm.
You get to America.
Yeah.
You're in culture shock. Your uncle dies. You were just in the Holocaust. You must have been pretty depressed.
Yes, it was emotionally very burdensome to me.
Yeah.
I remember going to the Hippodrome movie theater on Uta Street. To see a film in the afternoon. Before the end of the film, I started hyperventilating. Like, I couldn't catch my breath. These were emotions. When the next day I went to Dr. Mese, that's the one who treated my uncle, and he became my physician, family doctor. I went to Dr. Mese and explained him what happened. Took my blood pressure, examined me, says, Leo, you're fine. So what was that? This is Leo, this was your shock. This was an aftershock from what you experienced with your uncle. There was definitely an emotional reaction.
Do you think there's a term for people that have been in war or experienced traumatic situations, post-traumatic stress disorder? Do you feel like you had that?
It's a term, and people have that war, and that's the camp situation. Soldiers have that same thing. People have that, you see, but the only thing is that when we came here, there was no psychologist, there was no psychiatrist, there was no social worker. Today, when you have a stress syndrome after an event, a plane crash, a big fire somewhere, floods, immediately you have in the school, the shooting in the schools. Immediately the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the counselors, they are immediately there to tell you what to do, to keep you informed and to make it easier for you to cope. Well, we didn't have that. We were, the first thing that I had to worry about coming to America, get a job and make a living. I could not be a burden to my family or to the state. That was part of the affidavit. But I wouldn't want to either. So I had to look for a job. I arrived on the 29th of January. Well, by the 15th of February, by the 15th of February, I was working.
Wow.
So, I'm sorry, well, when did your uncle pass away? What was
In
the-
February.
February. So immediately after you continue to work?
A month after I arrived, he died.
And
And I continued to work, yes.
were you in a sense a provider for your aunt and the other
No,
family?
no, I lived with my aunt, they sheltered me, but it wasn't long before when Freddie came, rejoined, I told you before, came from New York to join me. Freddie and I took an apartment. We rented an apartment for ourselves. I didn't want to live with my family.
What year was it?
That was 1947, 48, yeah.
And where did you live? In Baltimore?
On Cold Spring Lane first.
So you're a Pikesville native.
Yeah, well, Cold Spring Lane was more like Upper Park Heights.
So you move in with Freddie, and then what happens to your life?
And then Freddie got married in December of 51, and I got married in July of 52.
And who did you marry?
Flo.
Oh. And so, did you move in with her, or did she move in with you, or?
One before we were married.
Or yeah, before you were married.
Flo lived on Liberty Heights Avenue with her parents and a sister. And I met Flo in November of 51. Another friend of Freddie and me, Herbie Friedman. He lives now in Avalon here. Another friend of mine got married in November of 51. I was his best man, and Flo was the bridesmaid.
Is that how you met her?
We met at the wedding rehearsal.
Oh.
That was in November of 51, and we got engaged in March, and then in July we got married, 6th of July.
She always lived in America, and
She was born in America,
Right.
and her parents were born in America.
So did she know your story?
Oh, not immediately. I talked very little about it. I really did not speak too much about it because I had unfinished business with my
Right,
mother and sisters.
right.
It was too hard to dwell on it, to speculate. But when I finally found out in 1962 that I was notified, I'll show you the papers that gave me the notification, I have it right here, from the Jewish community in Vienna. I was notified what happened to my mother and sisters. I started opening up all to tell everything to Flo and the family. And I said, you know why I'm doing it? Because their voices are gone. I have to speak up. I cannot let it be unsaid. And it had to be told because for nothing else but to honor their memory. You know.
So 1962, you're living with Flo.
Yeah, that was only 5 years after we
Right.
got married.
In Pikesville. And
No, we didn't live in
Oh.
Pikesville. We lived on Liberty Road.
Liberty
Woodmore. We bought a home. We moved in right after we were married.
And where are you working at this point?
At that point, I was working for Standard Textile. The
Okay.
Standard Textile Company, a textile firm on Hopkins Place.
And what is Flo? Does she work in?
She worked, that's all she ever did since she left high school. Medical secretary. She worked for,
Oh, she still does.
she still does.
Oh, wow.
With this person, she's now over 20 years, but she only works 1 day a week, and that's Tuesday. In fact, she works in Cockeysville and met our son on York Road for dinner. He lives in the general area. So.
So your life is going along smoothly, everything.
That is what?
Your life is going along smoothly, pretty much. I mean,
Well,
of course you're...
Sometimes smoothly, sometimes not so smoothly,
Right.
like life is, and the ups and downs.
Right.
But it was normal. Let me say, normal
Right.
daily routine, working, resting. Later on, I went into the retail book business.
Oh, right. That's what you said you were in the book.
Yes.
Did you have children at this point?
We were married in 52. Our first child, our son, was born in 55. He's now 52 years old.
Wow.
What's his name?
Myron.
What is he the one that likes the Irish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is. If you go on Google and you get Myron, Bretholz, you see all this. And there he was, when Clinton was president, on St. Patrick's Day, he and his group were always invited to the White House.
Myron and his dance
Yeah,
group?
and even before with the other, there he is with Clinton. I'll show you that too.
Is it a dance group or a singing group?
No, they play instruments.
Oh, okay.
This is my son.
Which one is he? The one right
Next to the president,
with the glasses?
This is my, yeah.
Right next to Bill. Oh, and there's Hillary. Wait, he's standing in between Hillary and Bill.
Just let me show you something. Oops. Show you something. See these 3 papers? That's all I have left. I have no resting place for my mother and sisters. I have those tombstones. These are the 3 pieces of paper that I received from Vienna, telling me what has happened to my mother and sisters. Now I'm going to read it to you in German. Then I will translate it to you. Now each document says the same thing, except where the name is. It's a different name, my mother and my sisters. Aufgrund unserer Aufzeichnungen, meaning notations, information, we certify that wir bestätigen, dass Frau Dora Bretholz, geboren am 23. April 1895, zuletzt wohnhaft Wien, wo sie gewohnt hat, die Straße, that she was deported deportiert am 9. April 42 nach Izbica deportiert wurde und in unserer Rückkehrkartei nicht aufscheint sein. Can you translate that? Not exactly. This is to certify that according to our information, Mrs. Dora Bretholz, born on the 23rd of April 95 and where she lived, was deported to Izbica, that's near Belzec, a death camp, on the 9th of April 42, and her name does not appear on the list of those who have returned. Is that a long sentence to tell you what happened? And the same thing for both of my sisters. I showed you the picture of the plaques last time, didn't I? Did I?
Not yet. You
Not
said
yet.
you said
I
you
showed
would
you
save
that,
it until
okay,
tonight.
fine. I'll show you that. So this is the information that I got, and when I finally did get this, I decided it's time to talk.
So let me just, before this happened.
War das schwer zu verstehen? War das sehr schwer zu verstehen?
Nein.
Nicht sehr.
Die letzte Satz.
Der letzte Satz war schwer.
So Flo didn't know about did she know you were making an effort to find it?
Yes. Flo knew a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I didn't want to burden her with that, and I didn't want to burden the kids with that, because it's what's the use? It affects people, but there is also my son, for instance. My son, for instance, doesn't want to talk about it ever, but my daughters relate to it.
So was this like a great effort, or was it harder than you thought it would be to find out this information, or?
Well, I did not. I had over the years tried Red Cross and other agencies, but this was from the Jewish Community Council in Vienna, and my cousin who lived in Vienna then is still there now. We're going to visit her. She's ill now, very ill. My cousin got me these papers. She got it from them. Had them, give me a copy, and she mailed it to me.
What did you think when you got this for you?
Well, it was hoping against hope.
Right.
That I will have some positive news someday, who knows. It confirmed what I had thought happened to them as it happened to many thousands others. There were 1.5 million children were murdered.
Right.
1.5 million.
Well, do you feel any, like, not guilt, but do you feel any, maybe you could have told them something, or
Whom?
told your mom and your sister?
I wasn't there to tell her anything.
Right,
She sent me away
right.
to be in safety. That was achieved. I always had hoped that I would meet her and tell her to thank her for it.
Right.
I could not. What could I have? I know one thing, had my father been alive, he could have been arrested because he was a socialist. But had he lived, maybe he would have made efforts to hide with him or take him out, across into Switzerland, the mountains somewhere. But that is all speculation in hindsight. The only thing that is obvious with us, most survivors, and you hear that in the interview, did you ask you, you never saw that with the survivors.
Not
You will
yet.
see the same thing that others say. Why me? That question always comes to mind. You know, why me? What? But there's no explanation. It's metaphysical.
Right. So you must have, I would have felt sort of that it was my duty to deliver the message. You felt that way too.
Well, once I found out, I said to myself, I have no right to keep quiet now,
Yeah.
because if we do not remember them, then we kill them a second time.
Right.
If you lose memory, and if you have no memories or remembrance, that means you kill the memory and you kill everything. And this is what Hitler wanted, for us to be forgotten, to be annihilated. And if we do not remember and connect with that past, then we give Hitler a victory posthumously, and we cannot let this. It's burdensome, it's never easy. As I'm talking to you, it's emotional. But I have, as I said before, I have a choice.
Right.
I can say yes, I can say no, but my mother and sisters had no choice.
Right.
They were taken against their will to be murdered.
So it's 1962, and you find out about this. So what's the first thing you do when you find out about it, or do you wait a while?
I know now that I can say Kaddish after my mother, the memorial prayer.
Right.
Before I didn't know whether I can, and my sisters, I say this, you know, when the Yom Kippur comes and all this, you see history. But I couldn't change what had happened. You have to live with it. It's a tragedy. You see, there's several tragedies come in various, what do you call it?
Degrees.
Different
Love.
ways.
Right.
If you have floods, New Orleans, or a volcano eruption, or an earthquake, that's a tragedy, right? But it's a statistic.
Right.
It's statistics. When it happens next door to you in a home, that a home next to you is burned down and had a fire, and you knew all these people personally, that's a different kind of tragedy.
Right.
So this is, you know, when you hear about 1.5 million children were murdered, that's a tragedy and a statistical tragedy, unfortunate as it is in the land of poets and thinkers. But when you know that 2 of your sisters were also murdered, then it's personal.
So how old is your child at this point? How old is your child at this? Your son?
My son now,
Yeah.
he's 52.
No, I mean, how old was he when you found out that?
Oh, in 62 he was born 55 or 7 years old.
And did you have any other kids after?
Yeah, we had two. One was 4, and the other one was 62. That's when Edie was born in. That was the year she was born. She was born in 62. She's now like 45. Born in 62 in February, and I found out in October. So she was 8 months old when I found out. My daughters relate to it, and my granddaughter, in fact, was one of my grandchildren interviewed in the DVD in that Survivors Among Us, right where you're sitting. There was Deborah was sitting here doing the interview, and she was sitting on another chair here. They wanted to know from her, what does she think and how will she go on with this. She says, eventually I will talk for my grandfather. And she reads like a paragraph from the book referring to the story When I Met Jeanne d'Arc. They asked her to read something out of the book and she picked that. That's Andrea, my granddaughter Andrea. I have a granddaughter Andrea, a granddaughter Samantha, a grandson Michael, and a grandson David.
So it seems in the face of all this tragedy and this news, you had the things in life that people crave and want. You had love and children. And
I have a family,
yeah.
a new family. There are the new branches on the old tree, twigs, and c'est la vie. So ist Leben. Das Leben geht so. Das Leben muss fortgehen. Stimmt das?
Ja, stimmt.
See?
Life
She
is
agrees
like
with
this.
me in German. Very good. I'm impressed. You pronounce it very well and everything. Yeah.
So I'm going to go to a happier memory. I'm just going to go back to how you met Flo.
I met Flo.
Or, I mean, how you began your relationship with her.
Well, we at the wedding, at the wedding rehearsal,
Yeah.
we kissed.
The first day you met her?
And that's what yes, at the wedding rehearsal. But no, that wasn't, no, the wedding rehearsal was a week before the wedding.
Oh, the rehearsal.
The rehearsal,
Okay,
you know.
okay.
The man who handled it all has to do that, you know. I don't know whether we did there or the next day or at the wedding, but whatever it was, we met at that wedding, and we got engaged, as I said, in March of 52, and then married in July of 52.
What about in between the kiss and the engagement?
He's dying to
The
know.
courtship and the
Courtship.
dating.
Well, there was the engagement. We took a trip with her parents to New York. We went to theater, to movie together. You want something spicier? You won't get it.
She wants some spice.
What, did you have a car by this time?
Oh, sure. I traveled since
So you could go pick her up?
Oh yes, I traveled
for dates?
since later on since '48.
What was your first car?
A Plymouth 47, a grey Plymouth 47 that my boss had that car, and he sold it to me, and he got a new one. And I traveled for 13 years for a textile firm. I had a big territory. I traveled from Delaware into western Maryland, into West Virginia, into the south, into Virginia and North
Wow.
Carolina. I had a big territory. I traded a car every 18 months.
You got to drive a different car every 18 months.
Well, because I put on so much mileage.
Nice.
So you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I made a good living. We bought a home. In fact, after we got married, we lived 1 month with my in-laws, and then we moved into our own home on Fairview off Liberty Road near Woodmore. And we left that home in 1975 when Flo and I went over to Amsterdam in Holland. We lived there for 2
Oh,
years.
really?
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go. So it's 1962, and
Yeah.
you're still working for the textile.
Textile firm.
And did you like that line of work?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Did you good?
Yeah.
So what happened after 1962?
This is Flo. It must be Flo. Who else has a key?
So far, she just opened the screen door.
Let me go open the door for you.
I can open it. You don't have to.
Gotta look for my keys. Thank
Hi,
you.
Flo.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello, everyone.
How was dinner with your son?
It was fine. Thank you.
Look what the ladies brought you.
Oh, how sweet.
Well, and for you also.
That's all right.
Very nice. How'd it go today? Are you still going strong?
Yeah, you and I just kissing
Oh, really? Okay.
at the wedding.
Yeah, I
I'm
thought it
sorry.
was supposed to only go
I'm sorry I'm
stop
bringing
when you enter America.
No,
That's
it's
when
up
it
till
ends.
right now.
Mm.
Till this very moment.
We're in 1962 right now.
Still in 1962.
62?
It's- or, okay, what happened?
Edie was born then.
I just told him that.
All right, what
What?
happened? What was your first effort to get the word out about your parent, your mother, and your
I started
sisters?
talking. I just started telling him what happened, where I was in the camps, and you know, before all I had done was said I escaped from a train without details. This time I started telling the whole story, and my kids listened to it. They were too young at the time to understand it, but of course I told Flo, and she kept. She coaxed it out of me more and more, and then what happened, like what you just asked, what happened, so I started telling the whole thing.
So you started with your family,
Yeah.
and then you went to who else? Who was the next person you
Who was your first public
Yeah.
public talk? What was it?
I formed a group in the 60s. Yeah. That's when I started first public talk. The group was called Prejudiced Anonymous. There were a group of us, Jews, Christians, Catholic, Protestant, black, white. We went out, we called it Prejudiced Anonymous, taken after the title of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
Like alcoholism is a sickness, so is prejudice. An alcoholic will not do anything about his sickness until he admits that he is an alcoholic, that he has a problem. If he says, oh, I'm just drinking for fun and this and that, but then he comes home and abuses his wife and children, that's no longer fun. Then he's an alcoholic and he's sick.
Right.
And when you do that, you have to look for help. And then you go into Alcoholics Anonymous, a group therapy. Yeah. So we named this group Reverend Luther Starnes, Methodist minister, and I, we were the originators. And we had a group of about 20. And we called it Prejudice Anonymous, because prejudice is an illness that has to be dealt with.
Where was
If
this?
you say I'm not prejudiced, but then you don't want to associate with blacks or with Christians or Jews, whatever, then you have a problem, so you have to do something about it. We went out as a panel to speak to such diverse groups as the Black Panthers
Wow.
in West Baltimore. And we went to Joppatown, to redneck country. And we went to schools. We went to Arlington, Virginia, where Rockwell's Nazi Party was. We talked at a high school a few blocks away from the American Nazi Party. And we went out and told people, when we started talking, we introduced ourselves. My name is, and I'm prejudiced. But here's what I'm trying to tell you, what I want to do about it. And these were the first. Flo, wasn't that Prejudice Anonymous that first involved me in talking?
Uh-huh.
Miriam.
Okay, that's a perfect
And
break
you know
because we
what,
gotta
Flo?
change tapes
Flo,
right now.
Okay.
Take it, it's Miriam.
I'll take it here.
Take it there. And you know what? Today I was thinking of calling her because I want to tell her we're leaving. It's my cousin.
Hello.
In fact, that's her mother.
Yes.
It's her mother
Hi, Vicky. How you
who
doing?
brought me over here. And Sophie,
Okay.
she's my first cousin.
Okay.
Let me just change tapes. It's perfect breaking point. So what do? I press the red button.
Aw.
Lift the
It's
lid
okay.
off the pitcher. That's the first thing you do when you want to drink. You have to lift the lid.
No, you have to shake it though. Don't you like? Do you like lemonade? Is that all right?
Yeah.
What did I do with my glass of lemonade there? I think I left it on the desk. Oh my goodness, wasn't nice. I'll get some ice cubes.
It's good to have a wife. Great, right? Interesting. Ice cubes, lemonade. Oh no, these are the perks.
I'll wait.
Flo, what takes you so long?
What did you say?
You heard me. I'm just joking.
You want this ice on your head?
You guys are so like spunky. It's great.
I made a faux pas today.
What'd you do?
Flo, I called that reporter again at the Carroll County Times. A new report at the Carroll County Times. Tomorrow I'm going to do a talk at Eldersburg, at the Eldersburg Library.
Or is-
And Thursday I'm going to a book club to talk in Columbia. This young woman who tells me she's a cub reporter, she just started a few weeks ago, and the library gave her the assignment to do an interview so they can put it in the Carroll County Times because Eldersburg is in Carroll
Did
County.
you call her because you weren't nice to her?
She called me, and then she is interviewing me. She says, would you ever do this? You're now interviewing me. That's what she said. And before she finished, she says, Mr. Bretholz, would you know anything else that I should ask you? I mean, you have a list probably
Well,
of...
maybe
I
she
have
just
to
wa-
ask
maybe
this.
what she meant to say was, do you have anything else that would be of interest, you know, that you could tell me? But she worded it differently, and
So I facetiously said, well, you could ask me what my blood pressure is or how tall I am.
that wasn't nice. I told him that wasn't nice, and he probably
I
felt
called
guilty
her back for
to apologize.
Beth Ward
Yeah.
in the newsroom at the Carroll County Times, and she was very friendly. I said, Beth, I just want to tell you this. When you asked me if there's anything else, I was a little flippant there. Maybe I shouldn't.
A little.
I meant this to be as a joke. And my wife always says to me, Leo, don't joke around with people because you can offend people with that. So
He's still
she
learning.
says,
He's
no,
still growing
no,
up."
no. She says, really, I took it as a joke. That was all right. She says,
Okay.
I really didn't mean to just shrug you off with that with a flippant answer. And if it came through that way, I apologize. Nothing to apologize, Mr. Bretholz. I knew you were joking. And that put me at ease.
Okay.
Does it put you at
Because
ease?
I bawled
Ben?
you out.
Does it put you at
Only
ease?
it wasn't nice to say. I had the blood pressure.
I could have said my pulse instead of blood pressure. Would it have been better?
That's enough, Dan.
She could have asked me, are you flat-footed or do you have good arches?
Yeah. I think I'll go back out. You weird.
She tells me something that I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what else is new?
That's his news, right?
I'll just change the subject. I
That's
find
it,
it-
Susan. That's
Please,
lovely.
stop.
I
I'm
was
not
gonna
taking
say-
it back. Go help yourself, lady.
Keep it on the. Actually, I'll keep it on the topic of the Holocaust. I find it somewhat inspirational. I do find it inspirational that someone
Can
can
you find that one?
inspirational that
Inspirational.
someone can go through such tragedy and live in such happiness. Like I don't know, that just
Well-
inspires me. I don't know.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to make a laugh. You see, when you have the children, for instance, when my son is present, I can never mention the term Holocaust.
Yeah.
If that ever comes up in a conversation, if he happens to be here and we let's say at dinner, and that comes up, he would get up and walk out. Speechless, he would walk out.
You had a hard time handling it.
That's it. So, but the daughters are different, and the granddaughters are different, and they read my book, and they get the teachers involved, and they ask the teachers to get the book, and then the teachers ask me sometimes to come and do some talks, which happened in several instances. But you have to, you can't give up. If you give up again, Hitler has a victory. Posthumously. But inspirationally, I appreciate the fact that you see something positive in that. But and hatred, I can't hate. I can't hate those who killed my mother. I don't know who they are, number one. But hatred is a very destructive emotion.
Yes.
Hatred destroys the person, the hater too, because you can't think straight anymore.
That's true.
If you hate, you that's all you do. You lose all rationale, all reasoning. And a lot of people say that to me. You mean you hate the Germans? No. Why would I hate the Germans to
really-
do what they did?
Right. You hate what they did, but
What
you don't
they
hate
hate
them.
that's right. And then we meet in Austria, we meet non-Jewish people. Young men who work for Jewish causes. And when we meet them, it's called the Gedenkdienst. Gedenkdienst. Remembrance service. And these people work for Jewish causes. They come to the Holocaust Museum, and every 18 months another one, takes over because instead of doing the military service in Germany, in Austria, they go for 18 months to do these civic duties. And you see, they are getting paid back in a way. Not that you want revenge. Revenge has never solved anything.
Right.
Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter, in his book, The Murderers Among Us, in his book, he says, my goal is not revenge, justice. We want to find them and bring them to justice. But revenge doesn't cure anything. But these young men, when they speak to me, and when one of them said to me, I hate my grandmother. Isn't that punishment enough? When a grandson says, I hate my grandmother, you know why? Why is that, I said? Over her bed in her bedroom, she still has a picture of Hitler hanging there. I hate my grandmother. That's enough punishment for that grandmother, that the grandson hates her. And this is what Wiesenthal said. We want justice, not revenge. When we found out that one of the Nazi officers who was a camp guard, murdered people, was hiding out in Asia, somewhere in Nepal, and he became a shepherd, living as a hermit in the mountains, away from the rest of the world. When our agents found him, instead of bringing him in or arresting him, they let him be there. Just to have found him in that state of condition, we knew he's being punished enough.
You think
That's
so?
punishment for him. Its justice has been done. He lives in a world away from the rest of the world as a hermit. We know that he's there self-inflicted, self-imposed. But he's been punished enough that he has to do that. And that is basically what we're doing. If I would say I hate this, I get myself all worked up, I wouldn't be able to talk. But sometimes in the talks I get very emotional. I wipe a tear here or there too, and I see people join me. People get the story and understand it. And young people write me wonderful letters from schools. That's the reward.
And also the many groups that you have, well, the group that you started, Prejudice Anonymous.
Yes. That is one group. Later on it dissolved because some of the people moved out of town. It was always the same people doing the talking, and the others just came as a support group. So after a while, 2.5, 3 years, they dissolved. Some of them moved out of town, a couple of them died. And Luther Starnes, Flo Luther is still alive, isn't he, Luther Starnes? Oh, she's downstairs. Yeah, Luther Starnes, a Methodist minister. He and his wife Joyce, we became good friends. And then the book was done. And the book was translated into Dutch and German. It was also published in England. The German title of my book is Leap into Darkness. The German title is Flucht in die Dunkelheit. Flight. Flight into the dark. Or darkness.
What happened in between the book and the Prejudice Anonymous? Any other?
Oh, the Prejudice Anonymous was in the 60s.
Yeah, so, and when the book was published in the
In 98.
So there must have been other things.
9 years ago. Well, you know, then a lot of schools took it in, and I get yesterday on Sunday I was at a church in Churchville, right near Bel-Air, between Aberdeen and Bel-Air. These are my talks this year already. Here and here. 40 of them. And it's only October. These are all the talks. I write them down because I have to write down my mileage for my income tax. You know, he wants to know what mileage do you do. I do this so that I'm allowed to take off mileage as a deduction. So here it is. St. Margaret's, Chantry, Sudbrook, Bryn Mawr, Hadassah.
Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania?
No, Bryn Mawr School. Here.
Oh, okay.
Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania is right near where the art is. East Philadelphia, West Philadelphia. Yeah. John Carroll High School, Yeshiva Drumba, Catonsville Community College, Loyola, Chantilly High School in Virginia, Department of Health and Human Services, St. Mary's Seminary. I mean, you get synagogues, Roland Park Middle School, Count Middle School, St. Francis of Assisi School, Harford Road, Washington Jewish Museum of Maryland. This was the last one. Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Church, 80 miles. But that's what you ask. Yes, I have to do it. And if I get calls and I can't, we do it some other day. I refuse some of them too because it's just not possible to do them all. So I give a name of other survivors and they get somebody else to do the talk. That works too.
So you really, from 1962 on, you've been fighting for...
To spread the word, to connect with young people. I like the idea of speaking to young people because I can, without qualm, say, as I said before already, take it with you into the future. I can tell you that. I cannot tell that to an old age home. That would be sassy.
Right. You told us the story.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
So, what else happened in your life? Any big events? You're in America. You have 3 kids, a wife, good job,
Family,
family.
When did you
Traveling.
switch into the book business?
travel. Well, I traveled and I carried a lot of suitcases. I carried 14 suitcases in my car. Samples for
The
film.
textile.
Textile.
Yeah.
And I developed a back ailment. I have 2 deteriorated discs. They're actually gone. They slipped, they're out. But the vertebrae are supported by calcium deposits, sort of a pillar. So the nerve is not being pinched constantly. If it were constantly, I need an operation. But fortunately, I can deal with it this way and with sometimes pain pillars. But I went to the doctor in the 60s, Dr. Rudin on York Road, and Dr. Rudin said, "Well, Leo, I don't want you to come here and pay me $5 each time for diathermy treatment, heat treatment, or stretch treatment. It won't get better as long as you travel, because sitting in that car, it's occupational stress, disease. You have to get out of that car and do something else, because it will never get better as long." I traveled, as I told you, I traveled 50, 60,000 miles a year. He says, as long as you do that, it will not get better. No use coming here. You're spending that money without getting any results. So I had a friend who was in the variety store business, like a 5 and dime store, Ben Cohen. And spoke to him and says, "Leo, I want to get out of this too." So I went out with him and we went into the liquor business for a few years. And in 1968 we closed up after the riots here. And after 68 I went into a retail book business.
What riots? Can you talk about those?
Yeah,
We don't know.
Baltimore riots in 68. What year were you born? 85. In 68, the riots all over in Watts in Los Angeles, in Detroit,
Against the war.
in Newark, not against the war. That was the after Martin Luther King.
Civil
was
rights
Right.
movement.
Is that the
the
what?
Gay Street here was, they
Really?
burned down places. A lot of places were burned down here. So I went out of that, and then in 1968 I went into the retail book business in partnership, and for 20 years I was in that business, and so I developed. And then I said to myself, I see so many titles here, it's about time, billions of words, maybe I should put my own words there. And then my co-writer, Michael, came to the store almost every day. He says, "Leo, when are you going to sit down and write that book?" I said, "Well, I'm in the store 7 days a week. I have no time." Then when I retired, they said, "You have no longer any excuses." I retired in 95. So I have no longer any excuses, and I started doing it, and I wrote 660 pages legal lined yellow paper
Yeah.
in black lettering, and he edited it and put it on computer and added his own words into the events and everything. We're very satisfied with, because the schools have taken it in and using it as a tool for education. And that's why some of the... I told you also that a teacher in California has now established a study guide
right.
on that book.
And the Wisconsin teacher who wrote a symphony about your book.
That's the other one. That's,
Right.
One for a band, and we just got a letter from her.
And you're gonna go.
We
Did you get the grant?
Yeah, she got the grant, and
great.
Flo, I got an answer from Nancy Fairchild today.
Yeah, I read it.
Did you read it already?
Read it.
So do you think that's all right? Yeah.
Gonna go to southwestern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Southwest Wisconsin. She said she will pick us,
Blackville.
and she will pick us up. She wrote today. She'll pick us up in Madison.
What a blast.
What about that boy that wrote you that he has a friend who's related to what's his name, the Nazi?
Yeah.
What's his name? The one that did all
Yeah.
Mengele.
Mengele, Dr. Joseph Mengele. Did you see that letter?
Mm-hmm.
That's from Glen Elk School. I have to call him.
No,
here.
this is from Brian in Michigan.
You mean the one that you read downstairs? There's another letter from a student for an interview in Glen Elk.
Okay.
That's right off Route 99 in Howard County.
So, obviously you're a reader. You like reading.
I read less now, but I still read. Yeah.
And you liked your job in the book business.
Yes. Yeah. It was very interesting, and meet all kinds of very interesting people, and it was good. And we sold it later, and then we lived for 2 years in Amsterdam, in Holland.
How was that?
That was all right too. My partner, with whom I was partner here, opened that store in Holland, and then his partner there wanted back to America. So he asked me if I would go over there. I said, yeah, because I speak Dutch. And I was there for over 2 years. Flo, I got there in March of 1975. Flo joined me in June after school was ended here. That time Edie was bat mitzvah. And Flo came with the girls. My son was at Georgetown, and he didn't join us, but he came there to visit us once. And we took the girls with us. First they didn't like it, and then they didn't want to leave when we came back. They learned the language, and they still speak Dutch.
Wow. How old were the two of them?
Flo, how old was Edie when we went in? Edie was born in...
She had just finished having her bat mitzvah. So
That's
she was
right.
13,
13.
Who was your other daughter?
The other one, Denise, she
17.
she was 17 then. She went to an extension school from Syracuse University in Amsterdam.
Wow.
And she was proctored by a fellow who worked in the store where I worked, and he was a Penn State graduate, so he proctored her. And when we came back in '76, we were there from '75
He
to
proctored her
'76.
so she could graduate high school.
That she
And
could
the
graduate
following
high. I'm
year
just in the
went
midst of telling that, Flo.
So,
Yeah, but that's right. We came back here in '76 to just for vacation, a month, to visit 6 weeks. And then we went back, and Harry Joe proctored her, and she graduated. He proctored her there because she went to an extension from Syracuse University in Amsterdam, and came here to graduate in '76. She graduated at Milford Mill. Then we went back to Amsterdam. We finished staying there. Flo and I came back by myself, and Flo and the girls stayed there until they finished school. They went to school there. And so that was an experience too, a different experience.
did you do any work there with the Holocaust? And
No, we did not do anything of that nature, although I was invited a couple times to talk. But we got visitors regularly from here. And they came there and they visited us. Some of we stayed overnight in our apartment. But everyone that came there wanted to see the Anne Frank house.
no,
So we went, Flo,
Yeah.
how many times did we go to the Anne Frank house?
I don't know, like 3 or 4.
A little more
Maybe
than,
3 or 4 times.
well, and we
Everybody wanted to go there.
everybody wanted to go there. So the Anne Frank house is a memento of those years, you know. So that was another experience.
Right. So you get back to America. What year was that? You get back to America?
Where, from Amsterdam?
Yeah.
We were just there 2 years, in 77.
I have a question about Amsterdam again. Like when you first left Europe, it was because you had these, bad feelings about Europe and you just wanted to get out. Did you have any of those same feelings, like trepidation or hesitance about returning, and like memories flooding back? And
Back to Europe?
Mhm.
No, not really.
Because you
Actually,
hadn't
we
you
went
hadn't been in Holland before, had you?
No, I was in Belgium before.
Right, you'd never been to
No.
Holland.
Belgium, I learned Flemish, which is Dutch, the same thing. But Flo and I went back to Europe in 54 already.
Oh,
We were
how's
married
that?
in 52, and we went back for a whole month to Europe to visit. I wanted to introduce Flo to my Aunt Erna, who has survived in Paris, and another uncle in Belgium, and my cousin Sonia, and then my cousin Helen, who lived in England, still lives in England. She's now 92. And I'm not going to tell you the relationship there, because that's the soap opera in the book at the end, and that is a surprise, a real surprise. But anyway, when we went back in 54, I wanted to introduce Flo to my family. We were there for a whole month. Then in 1970, we took all 3 kids on a 2-month trip
Wow.
to Israel and Europe, 1 month in Israel and 1 month in Europe. And I showed them, I went to that river where I crossed into Luxembourg and showed it to the kids.
Oh, no.
They didn't realize it. They said, no, that couldn't have happened. It couldn't have, because that river was a placid river, a placid stream. But after 5 days of rain, this was a torrent. And I explained the things to them, went back and we saw my Aunt Erna, introduced the kids to the family. It was 1970. We went back to Vienna. That was the first time I went back to Vienna. Isn't that right, Flo? Babe? When we went back to Vienna, that was the first time in 32 years.
Wow.
Because I had left Vienna in 38, that was
Depressed, he
1970.
wasn't happy.
I wasn't too happy.
You didn't have a good time in Vienna.
Why not?
He was
No,
not a happy camper there. Not the first time he went back.
no, it's different.
Why it was?
It was too fresh, It was
Right.
still, too.
Time,
You couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah.
yeah, is that true?
You couldn't wait to leave.
When's the first time that you went to Israel?
1970. That
Okay.
was the year we were gone 2 full months with 3 kids. We went to Israel for a whole month, and then Europe for a whole month. We rented a car in Rome, and we had something like
But
7
you said
suits.
about the trip to Israel, right?
Huh?
That's what you said about trip
Yeah.
to
The
Israel?
first time that you were in Israel was
That was in
1970.
1970.
In 1970.
What did
I
you
just
think
said.
of Israel?
With the I like a place where the phone booth had mezuzahs.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had relatives there. My uncle Jacob, who went to Palestine in 1930 as a 21-year-old. That's also in the book, by the way. He went to Palestine in 1930 as a 21-year-old. He died at about 90 some years ago. But Uncle Jacob was on a kibbutz, and we went to visit him. And right now in that kibbutz are between 30 and 40 members of the family, all from that one uncle who came there.
Wow.
Can you imagine if only more people could have escaped, how many people would be here now? But he was just one. And Uncle Jacob died, and his wife died.
The
And
drum? The drumming?
Yeah, there's been a
Yeah,
band
yeah.
playing for a while.
I think they're practicing
across
for,
the-
for Simchas Torah. I
Oh,
believe.
okay.
They're doing whatever. They're at the synagogue. They made a noise all afternoon. I couldn't
Really?
take my nap.
Poor thing.
So Europe, Vienna the second time is a lot better.
Yeah, second time is better. Every time it gets a little better. Right now I'm going again with misgivings. In fact, I told Flo we're leaving next week. I can't wait till I get back. I'm reading this book about Vienna, and it brings back all
Right.
kinds of things, that how dastardly a group of people they were. Just hateful. It's just, I don't know,
But now we have wonderful friends there.
wonderful.
Most of them are not Jewish, and they're wonderful. They're so angry about what happened with their relatives, ancestors, what they did.
My
Just,
my
good pe-
publisher-
Very good people.
the fellow who published my book, he wanted to take us out to dinner last time, and he did, when we were visiting there, and his daughter made reservations in the place. And he found out that that was a place where during the Nazi period, the Nazis held their main meetings. It was a gathering place for Nazis. He says, call him up and cancel. I don't want to go into that place. That's today. 60 years later, he doesn't want to go in there.
What do you think of all this support that
It's good. It's good to see that people have come to realize that something bad was done, and he does something to change it.
We have to keep reminding them that it wasn't their fault. They weren't even here, and they feel so horrible about it, but they're not responsible for what their relatives did. But these are really good people, and they can't imagine that anything like that happened. They just can't imagine people being that cruel.
There's some good people there now. And of course, when I speak about this woman who still has Hitler's picture, that's the exception. But she gets her due by her grandson hating her. That is an awful thing. I can still not get over it where a grandson can say, I hate my grandmother. I mean, a son can say, I hate my mother.
She won't change her
A
ways.
son can say, I hate my father, I hate my mother. But a grandson hating a grandmother?
that never happened?
Why do you think that's a great distinction?
There's a distinct, well, because grandmothers are doting. Grandmothers are a picture of gentleness, My grandma, my grandpa. My kids call me old jokes grandpa. My granddaughters call me old jokes grandpa. That's I like that.
So even they're getting tired of his old jokes.
I fail to see the humor.
See, I didn't have grandparents like that, so I know that's what grandparents are supposed to be like. But
Yeah, but that's just it.
they're supposed to be.
There's a different
They're supposed to
relationship.
spoil you, right?
It is a different relationship from son to father than from son to grandmother, grandson, grandmother, grandson, grandson. So,
in the 90s, this is when your book came out. This is when
end of the 90s.
and then you were reunited with.
Gendarme.
Sister Jeanne d'Arc.
You
Yes, that
talked
was-
about that.
That was in 99. We met her, and it was a great reunion, and a wonderful lady, and she told us just amazing things, and the correspondence that went on between her and me. She wrote like a poetess, and kind and gentle and caring and considerate. Everything all the attributes. And she passed away in 2006. It was a wonderful get-together, emotional, and yet very rewarding.
Where did you meet with her?
At her retreat. Yeah, we visited her at a retreat in the town of Castres in southern part of France, near Toulouse. And it's a nice town, Roman vestiges, nice. The Goya Museum is in Castres. And we met her there at her retreat for aging nuns. She was of the Order of the Immaculate Conception. And they called them the Blue Nuns because they were blue habits. As nurses, of course, in hospitals, trained and practical nurses, they were white. But as nuns, they were blue, they called the Blue Nuns. And that's what she was in her retreat, the House of St. Joseph in Castres. She made sure that I become acquainted with her nephews and nieces. And a couple of months ago, her grandniece was married. And I was invited to the wedding, couldn't make it, she was sent something, so been in touch, and it's to me it's the loss of a very good friend. And she knew I was Jewish, so, and she always liked what she knew about Jews, she said, and she knew at the moment when she saw me, she knew she had to help me, not so much physically as she was a nurse. She did the dressings and everything, but emotionally. Tell me, I have nothing to fear. when I heard I have nothing to fear, I was in seventh heaven.
Well, and it's amazing how she remembered you so vividly also.
Well, not actually.
Oh.
Yeah, she remembered what she asked me, because when I told her what she asked me to do to help out with somebody else, she says, yes, I remember that, and now I know just the time you were there. But don't just think it was just I. She never wanted to take credit. There were many of us that did that. We had male and female nurses there, and they all helped out. We were all connected in that. We all did the job together. She never wanted to get one iota of praise for herself or recognition. That is great. That is another wonderful trait.
Right. So you met up with her, and then your friend, wasn't that also in the 90s?
My friend Robert.
Yeah.
Well, my friend Robert, that was a story that is unbelievable.
Robert Hochman.
Robert
Yeah,
Hoffman, of whom I mentioned him in the introduction to my book. And Robert and I left each other in 1938 when I was 17. I went west, he was 16. He went to Palestine because the youth aliyah
Right.
cutoff age was 16. At ever 16, I no longer qualified. But after my book came out, I found out through someone who had read his name that he was with Robert, and he suggested that I write to Vienna to find out from one of the agencies if they might have him on one of the lists. And through that list, I found out about Robert. They called Robert and let him know that I'm looking for him because they couldn't give me his address and phone because
Right.
that was private. And I got a call 2 days later from Robert from Virginia Beach.
Oh yeah.
And I tell you something, this was one of the moments of absolute.
Exhilaration.
It's,
Yeah.
another thing happened today that is absolutely. Flo, did you see the book that the two books that you ordered?
Yes, I did.
Did you see the writing in there? Flo ordered 2 of my hardbacks. They're no longer available in the
Great.
stores,
This offer.
but she ordered them off Amazon. She found 2 hardbacks available on Amazon, and they came today. You wouldn't believe it. I opened up one of the books, my signature in there, and Michael Lesker's, with a dedication from me to a good friend. She passed away 6 months ago. She lived 6 blocks from here. And that book was dedicated to her, and that's the book I got into my hands today. Of all the thousands of books
You
that
didn't
were
even know.
out there, I signed it to her, to Lucille with my best wishes, Lucille, a friend of long standing, with my best wishes. I got this today. I mean, it came back to me from 6 blocks away to now through I don't know where it was sent from,
Even
Washington or from somewhere. People sell it to eBay, and eBay sells it, or they get somebody who has whatever it is. She sold it. These unusual things, but listen, that's.
What do you think of do you believe in fate, or do you think that it's just luck?
It's a little bit of luck, fate. We have a saying in Yiddish, beschert.
Right.
Beschert means it's fated.
Well, and
It's meant to be.
also between people, right? She's
Yeah.
my besheret means like
Yeah.
she's my soulmate.
Yes, yes. It's beschert, meaning beschert means, es ist beschert, or in German it's the same thing. It means it's meant to be. You see, fate, some woman once told me, not a woman, my travel agent, she said, Flo with flying was always unhappy, and I know I'm flying. But Frida believes in fate. She says, listen, when your time's up, it's up. I said, yeah, but I don't wanna be in the plane when the pilot's time is up. You know. I said, I made that remark. She said, well, you got some there, you know. But
Witty, witty.
fate is, yes, a little bit of luck, a little bit of, it's weird sometimes.
Yeah, you have to admit you have your fair share of coincidences or
Fate,
whatever you want to call
I
them.
have my fair share, that is for sure. In fact, when I was supposed to go to Vienna in June. Remember I told you?
Mhm.
You were sick.
And I
And you
couldn't
got
make it, I was
sick.
sick, and I said to the doctor, get me out of here tomorrow because I'm flying to Vienna. He says, Leo, you ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
And then he told me, Leo, I know all about your book. You again escaped. What do you mean? He says, did I tell you that? If you had not developed this fever the night before, but the next night when you or next day when you're on the plane, and you didn't have intravenous antibiotics immediately, you would have developed sepsis. Sepsis is
Wow.
poisoning.
This
This
is the
is
same-
fatal. This is fatal. Leo, you escaped again. Really. And I mean that. He was very serious. So, you're right. Yeah, I had my shares of, my share of strange coincidences and happenings, and also some of it was by my own initiative,
Right.
because I was always scared to go there where they tell you people were being killed, and took matters into my own hands. People said, you're escaping from the train, God had his hands on your shoulders. Fine. If you want to believe that, fine. But there were also infants and children and elderly and other people. Why me? Again the question comes up, why me? But you also, there's a saying. You heard that saying often.
Probably. What say?
Help yourself and God will help you. Help yourself and God will help you.
I thought you were going to say im aim
In een anili mili
If I'm not for myself, who will be
If
for
I'm
me?
not for myself,
Who will be for
who
me?
will be
and
for
if I'm
me?
only for myself.
If I'm only for myself, who am I? Ve'im lo achshav ematay. If not now, when?
When?
Do you believe in God?
I am quoting Elie Wiesel, my good friend.
Like, yeah, my dad, like,
He says, I have faith, but it is wounded. I showed you Wiesel's picture.
Mm.
no,
I have- What?
I don't think
Did you show us what?
Ellie likes
Oh,
this
no.
picture.
When did you meet Ellie?
Oh, I met him several times. This was 2 years ago at Goucher College.
Really?
This is my granddaughter, Andrea. She's the one that was also in the interview.
How old is she?
She will be 19 in 19 in January. There's Andrea.
With Ellie? So when did you meet him?
This was in McDonald's 2 years ago.
That's the very first time you met him?
No, I met him previously several times. I also met him this past July. No, not this. Last year in July in Washington, when I participate every year in a Holocaust essay writing contest sponsored by the Holland and Knight firm.
Is that was that on Oprah? I think it was.
Maybe did she mention it?
Yeah.
But last year the winner was Serenka Smith, a 15-year-old from Baltimore. They have some 10,000 students, 10 to 11, no, some, about 4,000 students participating in Holocaust Remembrance essay writing contest. And the 10 winners are being taken to Washington every year to be given their awards.
Do you
And
get
they-
to judge that
And
contest?
I get to judge that.
Oh, wow.
So they last year was Elie Wiesel, the keynote speaker. This year was Stuart Eisenstadt. 2 years ago it was Wesley Clark, the former presidential candidate, General Wesley Clark.
Mhm.
And they always have interesting keynote speakers. So that's where I met him again. And I wrote to him also. I write to him from time to time. I need some advice here or there. In fact, I wrote to him, Ellie, if I use your quote, is there anything you want me to add to? He says, no, just leave it the way it is. There's nothing that speaks for itself. I have faith, but it is wounded. That explains it. I have meaning, there are some doubts. And the rabbi in the camp said it in Auschwitz, Rabbi Salman Schechter. They asked him, Rabbi, where's our God? We have a God. Where is he? And his answer was, listen to this, a rabbi, yes, we have a God, but he's not with us today. God is every time, everywhere, any place.
Yeah.
He's not omnipresent. When he said he's not with us, that means he took a leave of absence, or he went somewhere else, had something better to do than to save souls. I mean, no, that's what he brings out. And Wiesel is an Orthodox man.
Oh,
He's Orthodox, yes. And the book Night is an excerpt from a bigger book that he wrote in Yiddish.
Oh, really?
That is just one chapter of that book. The bigger book in Yiddish was called Und die Welt hat geschwiegen. Und die Welt hat geschweigt. And the world was quiet, kept quiet. That was the book in Yiddish. And one of the chapters was the one that is called Night, that was called Night after he extrapolated it from that book, which deals strictly with his father's death in the camp. Where he doubts, where he questions, where he's very upset, and it was a 14-year-old. So naturally, he's not too well now. Really.
So, just another question. Do you believe in karma?
Well,
Sorry.
I guess so. A little bit of.
Yeah.
Look, when Jeanne d'Arc died, she was buried on the 9th of May. She spoke those words to me on the 9th of May. And do you think they remembered that? That's why they did the funeral? No.
Yeah.
When they told me she was buried on the 9th of May, I know that I was operated on the 8th in the evening, and the next morning on the 9th she spoke to me these words. Is that karma? I can't quite, but my granddaughter, and my daughter especially, Denise says, yes, Dad. There's something to that. In fact, at her eulogy, during her eulogy, it was brought out that her latter years, since 1998, were enriched and gave her something to look forward to every day, where she was ill, had a heart attack and other things at her age. Gave her something to look forward to the next letter that would come from America. And she wrote to me, when they bring me a letter and I see a smile on her face, the person that brings me my letter, I know that letter has a stamp from America on. And she is listed, not listed, her name was entered in the records at Yad Vashem.
Mm-hmm. As a righteous Gentile?
Yes. There it is. Why is that in French? She said when she saw a letter from Jerusalem coming to her, she knew exactly who was responsible for that. Yad Vashem. The information that have been communicated to us have told us that in the course of the year 1944, you have given your aid and comfort to Leo Bretholz during his 17 days, for the 17 days during which he was hospitalized in the hospital in Limoges, where you worked as a nun. Yad Vashem wishes to express its gratitude and profound appreciation for your humanitarian conduct at a time in a time of persecutions and dangers, for all those who were Jewish and for those who helped them. The brotherly hand that persons like you have extended to the Jews were rare and precious. Be assured that your action has found its place in the documents of witnesses at Yad Vashem for the better benefits of generations to come. Receive, dear Madam, they call her Madam, sister, our best wishes of good health, as well as the expression of our distinguished consideration. Dr. Mordechai Paldiel, Yad Vashem.
Did you nominate her for that?
Yes.
Oh.
I spoke to Paldiel, and I said, I have a story to tell you. He says, Leo, it's a worthwhile story. Now, when she died, I planted 2 trees in Israel Did I tell you that?
No, not yet.
I planted 2 trees in Israel,
I think.
and they sent the French certificate for those trees to her nephew in Paris.
Oh, right.
Yes, and he produced copies to send it to the other many nieces and nephews that he has, that she had, his cousins, I mean, and he wrote to me that my Aunt Jeanne d'Arc would have appreciated the idea of reclaiming the desert by planting trees there. So that was a nice thing to hear.
Was there a reason you planted 2 trees instead of 1? Or
I just wanted to have it a little stronger
Yeah.
this way, because she helped me and she was also a good friend. One thing is for her help, and the other one because a good friend died, you know. She became, look, in fact there's a letter I have. Probably this is the first letter that she wrote to me in French, which I may translate. This was her handwriting at age 90,
Wow, it's beautiful.
without lines.
It's perfectly straight.
You have good handwriting too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Well, I was good at calligraphy all the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
We had calligraphy at school.
Yeah, you showed us those.
Did I say
Oh,
that?
The writings you did
Yeah.
in jail.
Oh, yeah.
Those, but yeah.
My dear Leo, my dear Florine, I wanted to fill my page only with thanks, to express my appreciation for the good moments, short but so good, that we have spent together here. This was in '99 when we first visited after we came back. I cannot forget them. I am so profoundly touched by your closeness, fidelity, by your loyalty. The photo, I look at it without stopping, because the photo is full of emotions caused by that encounter. Those 54 years that have separated us after our first encounter in Limoges. And it's especially good that you have to have seen you again. I thank God for these instants of joy. It seems to me that I can now follow you easier into your faraway America with her thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that you had satisfaction returning to France, where you have so much suffered, dear Leo. And especially that we are now finding the possibility to relive it all being free. This also I cannot forget. Thank you also for this. Yeah, the period was a very stark and dangerous period, and has caused fear in your life, in the middle of people whom you never knew whether you should trust them or not. The fear of the alerts, the alarms that were blowing with of the bombardment, with sick people suffering where she worked, and the sirens. I don't want to bring back all these moments to you at these painful moments to you at this moment, these days, these months, these years in the darkness.
It's touching.
Believe me that my prayers will reach you as well as your family, the big ones and the little ones. They are always present in my heart, and I would be so happy if you would give me the name and the date of your religious holidays so that I can celebrate them with you living so far away from you, because it will be God on those holidays that will reunite us.
Wow.
I embrace you both in again giving you all my best words of appreciation, Sister Jeanne d'Arc.
Sure, it's really beautiful.
And I told you I gave her the religious holidays,
Mhm.
and then she lit the menorah there.
Oh.
And I always say that those nuns standing around and seeing what she does on her night table, they must have said, "Wow." But she explained it. I didn't have to explain the Maccabees to her. That's biblical. In fact, she even said to me, if not for the Maccabees, the victory of the Maccabees over the heathens, the Greeks and the Assyrians, the Jewish people would have been destroyed, she says. If there had not been a Hanukkah, she says, chances are there would have never been a Christmas. That's Jeanne d'Arc. You can't say it any better, could you?
She's a good heart.
She was good, yes. Great person, great human being. Gentle. And the one thing that she said to me when I wrote to her, I remember your dark eyes looking at me and saying, I have nothing to fear. Those gentle, dark eyes. She says, please don't romanticize it. I'm an old nun now. She wrote to me. I have all her letters. I have some 50 letters.
Oh, wow.
Eventually I will probably put them
Publish.
into, maybe publish, maybe just translate them and have them in a little folder for my kids or whatever,
Yeah.
the grandchildren especially.
That would be a great
Yeah.
book, though.
I have
And that would be a great thing to do.
Are we done actually? Or what? No.
You have anything else you want to
No,
say?
What else should you tell us, Leo?
Yeah.
What I can tell
Your
you.
blood
another thing.
pressure, your height.
No, but no, she asked me, is there anything else you want me to ask you? That was her phrasing. She didn't perhaps mean it that way.
Yeah.
But when I heard that, I couldn't help but throwing in a little flip there. But
Well,
that's when I called and apologized.
I've got a few questions that I thought of that I wrote on my arm so I wouldn't forget by the end.
What are they?
If that's okay. Just
You
come
mean
up.
when you want to ask now?
Yeah, just like things that popped into my head. I know that the idea of like the Holocaust and the term Holocaust are a fairly new sort of concept. It wasn't immediately in 45 that everyone started talking, oh, the Holocaust. It took a very long time for everything to sort of, become revealed. Do you remember the first time that you heard that term Holocaust and started thinking of it in those terms as a Holocaust?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because often when I start to talk and I have enough time, sometimes I get an hour and a half. I can do it all. When they tell me you have 30 minutes, then I can't go into history. But when the camps were liberated in 1945, when Auschwitz was liberated, there was one British journalist calling his office in London, I think it was the London Times, with a report. And he told this his editor, to his editor, he says, I'm here with the troops liberating a death camp. And I'm supposed to write about it, and I can't find the words to write it. And I don't even know what word to apply. They went into dictionaries and they went into encyclopedias. They looked for the proper word that could be applied to that which the eyes of the world never had beheld before. And they found the Greek dictionary, the term holocauston. Holocauston translates as total destruction by flames, by fire, by burning. The word caustic comes from it in English. Caustic, a caustic matter burns. Lye is caustic, that burns. Holocauston. And they decided to use the word Holocaust as the most appropriate for this occasion because it was a total destruction by burning. That was, but it became known already in 45, 46. Later it was applied, but later it became more popularized because there were events taking place and commemorations and Holocaust, and then they call it Shoah.
Right.
That's now
Which is the Hebrew term.
the Hebrew term. But in Vienna, in Austria, and in Germany, it is no longer called the Kristallnacht. It's no longer called Kristallnacht, but they call it now the night of the November pogrom. But this was one of your questions. I think you have an arm for it.
Oh, well, and between those two terms, Holocaust and Shoah, which do you prefer?
It doesn't matter to me.
They're both equally accurate.
Equally accurate, but when you say Shoah to a non-Jewish person, it may not, although I have many friends who are teachers and they're not Jews, and they call it Shoah because they want to be they want to be connecting it with the Jewish term, the Hebrew term. But I'm equally at ease with both of them.
Okay. And my other question, which I might have to cut off because we're nearing the end of this tape, but we were talking in class about sort of the how people push on and embrace life, and the way we talked about it was sort of a transformation from victimhood to personhood. Did you ever feel like a victim? Did you ever feel like that's all I am? And was there a time that you could only say I'm a victim before you could move into saying, no, I'm a person, I'm a Jew?
I never considered myself victimized.
Never.
I'm lucky to be alive, to be talking. The victims are those, the martyrs. They are the victims. The voices that have been still are victims. We are survived. We can remember. I don't even like the term survivor because survivor means, these shows that you have survival and all that. It's adventurous and you're doing extraordinary things. No, I was lucky. I was fearful. I was hopeful. But I've never had I've never had the attitude where I've been victimized because that would. No, I survived this thing. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I lost over 20 members of my family. My mother and sisters were murdered. What do I have to complain about? I eat a breakfast every day, regularly. I sleep in a bed. What else do you want after all these years?
You said you don't like the term survivor, and victim is even worse. If you had to come up with a term for it, what would you call yourself?
A witness.
Besides an old grandpa jokester.
A witness.
A witness.
And you become a witness to the witness. That's what Wiesel says. When you tell students, they carry on the message. They become the witnesses to the witness.
But when you think, or at least, when I think witness, I think a passerby. I think someone who was not personally involved.
A witness of the events, an eyewitness of the events.
This is firsthand, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's coming directly from...
Coming directly. This is not reported, this is not second-hand story. This is the witnessed events as Leo lived through them. And that's what it is. We want to call me a survivor? Yeah, fine. I'm here to tell the story, so I survived. But that means it's almost like, look, here I am, but you are gone. It's almost like you're bragging, like you're giving yourself a stamp of something bigger than it is. Instead of
Because that's how you started your interview, that you had a normal childhood. You are a normal person.
And that's what I want to be, a person. I don't want to be singular. Often when I am in classes and they ask, Mr. Bretholz, do you have a number? No, they look disappointed. You know what that is?
Yeah.
That's voyeurism.
What do you mean?
Unless you have a number, you don't even.
Oh, a tattooed number.
A tattoo.
Because you were never in a death
Never in a death camp in the East, and some of them are disappointed. To watch, to want to look at a number rather than to hear a story. That's voyeurism. That's curiosity.
Oh,
Didn't
that's
even
what
cross.
voyeurism means.
Voyeurism
means-
is like wanting to watch other people's lives. Sort of.
Voyeurism, the comedian, the one that says gets no respect, Dangerfield.
Rodney
Rodney
Dangerfield.
Dangerfield. He said something about a voyeurism.
Oh.
A peeping Tom is a voyeur.
Mhm.
Okay.
He says, a peeping Tom once watched me, and he booed me. He wasn't happy with what he saw. But anyway, voyeurism is like peeping, looking through a peephole. Voyeurism is you want to see something that you shouldn't be seeing. It's none of your business.
So people think it's almost like scandalous, like
Yes.
let me see your
Let me
tattoo.
see it.
That proves
If I
you're
don't
really.
have to get, it proves what you tell is true. If you don't have a tattoo, you have nothing to tell. But I was never, and I preface all my talks that way. I was never in a death camp. My efforts were directed at not getting to the camps.
Mhm.
And that took some doing, with all the escapes and the arrest and prison and camps. And more often being hungry when I went to bed at night, sometimes I wasn't in my bed. I went to sleep at night. In most cases I was hungry when I went to sleep. Maybe it was good, because I didn't overeat in butter and fat and meat and eggs. Who knows, maybe that was good.
Because then you were skinny enough to fit through that hole,
At that time
that
I was.
window.
Now I wouldn't. Then I was.
You said you weighed what, 119
About
pounds?
119, 120 pounds.
Later.
I'm now 160. No, that's,
Um,
what are you going to do?
I have actually two questions. They're very quick.
Go ahead. Or with the present time.
Yeah. What do you think of pop culture's adaptation of the Holocaust movies? I don't know. You probably Schindler's List.
Well, I
Life
saw
is Beautiful.
Schindler's List. Schindler's List was very true to life, but it was just the tip of the iceberg.
I haven't seen that, but
Nice.
yeah.
Schindler's List was the tip of the iceberg. You have to, in your imagination, you have to add more and more and more and more. But you did a good job.
The Pianist, all those.
Pianist I didn't see. Flo went to see it. I didn't need to see The Pianist, that personal story. But Schindler's List was something, because I also was then still in the book business. It was a bestseller, and I met Keneally, who wrote it. Keneally wrote a fictional book. He wrote a novel. That was a novel based on the
really?
story. Just like Leon Uris wrote Exodus. He wrote a novel based on an event. And when I spoke to Keneally, he told me, I said, why did you do it in novel form? He says, I have to add my own interpretation, my own thoughts, and my own fine points into it. I cannot write non-fiction. I have to have a fictional, an event that I can turn into fiction.
Right.
Which is almost what we're trying to do.
Yes.
To turn your life into a story, sort of.
And finally, how, decades from now, when people look back on your life, what do you want them to see?
Decades from now.
Or whatever.
That means when I'm no longer here.
Yeah, or just whatever.
You have no questions about it. Eventually, you asked me questions the other day.
She's thinking.
But what decades from now, I want this to be a teaching tool. I want young people to learn one main thing: persevere. Persevere, do not give up, because giving up is the easy way out. Persevere. If it doesn't come to you now, it may come to you tomorrow. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, it may happen the next day. At least persevere. And if it doesn't happen, you cannot fault yourself for not having done your best to try. Of course, I cannot compare a composition that you have to do or a math problem with the dangerous situations that I was in, but that still means persevere and stick to it. I made up my mind, I want to escape with my friend Manfred. And we did it. We didn't let anybody talk us out of it. And the woman on crutches was the one who emboldened us. She said, you must do it. This old woman said, and the young people wanted to talk us out of it. You know why? They probably would have wanted to do it too and didn't feel like it, didn't have the guts, it didn't have the impetus, it weren't scared enough. Maybe it was jealousy. Oh, why do you do that?
Yeah.
Young people should say, let me go with you. No, but the elderly woman, I say old woman, forgive me please. I don't know her name, but let her forgive me wherever she is now. I call her old woman. I was 21. If she was 60 to me, she was an old woman. Her eyes were deep set, she had grey hair. Fine. But she emboldened us, and others tried to talk us out of it. I listened to her, didn't listen to those who tried to talk us out of it, scare the wits out of us. If it succeeds, it will, and if it doesn't, I'm a loser.
I think you must have had a very strong inner voice that directed you, because I don't think most people would be capable of pulling off the things.
That's true, and that's what Professor Gilbert told me. Leo, there were only 12 reports of attempted escapes in all the deportations in France. He got it because he wrote the Atlas of the Holocaust. He's a historian. He wrote over 90 books, translated into I don't know how many languages. Martin Gilbert and I, we are in touch too periodically. But he told me that. Remember I told you, and I said I was in transport number 42.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in that transport on the 6th of November, how come you're standing here talking to
Right,
me?
yeah.
Because he knew that there was only 4 survivors. 5 actually, 4 enlisted in the book. It was the 5th one. So he knew what I was talking about. I said, I escaped, Professor Gilbert. I must hear about that. And then he wrote it in his book, The Holocaust. He put a whole chapter in there, like
Is
chapter 26.
Leap from Darkness
Leap into Darkness.
Leap into Darkness was the co-author or the publisher. The co-author was
Michael Oleska.
he wasn't Jewish.
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Oh, he's Jewish.
In
Okay.
fact, I just saw Michael yesterday.
The-
Yeah, Michael is Jewish. He was born in the Bronx, but he's more of a cultural Jew also.
right.
He's not Orthodox.
I like-
Goes to a Seder. What?
I like the cultural Jewish.
Jewish. He writes for the Examiner,
Oh,
the
really?
newspaper, every day, Monday through Thursday, 4 days. He wrote a good piece yesterday. He wrote a good piece today again.
Do you consider yourself a cultural Jew?
Well, I go to synagogue. I'm a member of a synagogue. By tradition, I want to live up to what my mother said, the last words. Never forget who you are. For better or worse, I do it to honor her, honor her memory. I like to maintain the holidays. Out of principle, I fast on Yom Kippur because I want to show something that connects me to my tradition, to Jewish people. I
So-
eat matzah.
Oh, sorry. Would you say you're about as observant now as you were as a child? The holidays and...
Well, as a child, my mother was the driving force in that. She was very traditional.
Well, and she still is the driving force.
She's still the driving force. And my mother kept kosher, And my father was a cultural Jew, never went to a synagogue. He was a socialist, and I figured that if he had been alive when the Nazis took over, he would probably have been arrested because they knew he was everybody knew the lists of the socialists. He could have been. Of course, he died when he was 39, so he never had a chance. I was 9 years old when my father died. So when do you think Uta will let you read the book?
I guess we
Does
can-
it depend on her when you're reading it?
No, we could have read it at any point.
Or you can?
We just didn't want to.
But not, you
because-
don't want to be influenced.
Right.
Or
Actually, I
guided.
think I'd still like to put together the presentation
Yeah.
without having read the book.
Really? While you have time, only another month or so, a month and a half. It'll be towards the end of November?
Yeah.
We
It'll
think
be
right
a
before
Friday
Thanksgiving
or-
break.
A Friday or next Shabbat?
Yeah, it's an Oneg Shabbat.
I told you that I would like to bring my daughter, my 2 granddaughters there. Would that be all right?
Of course.
Denise and the girls. I don't think Barry will come because he sometimes works late, but whatever. If he does, he does.
Just to conclude, I really appreciate how very real you were about your Holocaust telling. I think I forget what I was going to say.
I mean, I didn't hold back.
Yes, you didn't hold back, and you were honest when you said sometimes it is too much. People, that's a very unique perspective, and I think that's really great that you pointed that out because it really
It's not
it's
easy.
such an experience that it's so hard to imagine. You bring it down to a level of a normal human being telling a story, and I think that was very
It's
good.
not easy,
Yes.
but I do appreciate the fact that you took the time to do that project. Did you volunteer for that? Or did they pick you for that?
Well, this class?
Yeah.
Well, it's a class which
A
we
class.
registered for.
But how come you 3 decided to do the interview, not somebody
Well,
else?
everybody gets an interview, but with a different survivor.
Oh,
There's
really?
4 survivors
Oh, this time.
and three people.
There's 12 of you.
There are 13 actually. There's a group of 4, but
4.
we were fortunate enough to get you and not somebody else.
I was fortunate enough to get you.
Yeah.
But,
You probably know the other survivors.
Inge Weinberger. as
Ingo
well.
Weinberg, Saul Manischewitz, and Mr. Stern. I forget his first name.
No. Stern.
Stern. He's older. He's 93.
But we knew when we signed up for this class that we
Yeah.
would be.
And
Mm-hmm.
Stern. I met him, yes. I know Inge personally very well. Last year I did Rachel Bodner and Bluma Shapiro and the Kestenbergs, Vera and Felix. Everybody has a different story,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all what it is. Every story is different, and every story should be recorded because of history, and that's what you learn from. We have a hope. We have a new danger out there. That's Ahmadinejad. Wants to deny the whole thing. He knows it happened, but he's a demagogue. So we have, by the way, the Israeli Foreign Secretary, Zipi Livni, did a talk today at the United Nations, and I got it on the internet. She made some very, very good points. She was very cogent and very, very incisive with her remarks. I liked the way she presented it, and I hope it has an effect. Do you have? You have computers, you do. Right?
Of
Yeah.
course.
Do you think I should forward it to you? It's pages and pages, her speech.
You could, definitely.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Who should I do it to? To one of you, and you can share it?
Sure.
Who wants to get it?
Do you want to just give him or you want to just write down?
What then?
All right.
Do you want to give me your email address and then I'll email you and then you can email me?
Yes.
Okay.
leapintodarkness@aol.com. All in one word. All in one word. Then you give me that, I will get your address, and then I forward that to your address and you share it with them.
Mhm.
Go through the whole page. It gives you a few phrases, 3 or 4 phrases excerpts from her speech, but then it says, click here for the whole text. Little, then you get pages and pages. It takes you about maybe 12 minutes, 15 minutes to read it, but it is a very effective speech at the United Nations. We are again facing the threat of being destroyed. And what she said was so poignant. The destruction of one member nation by another member nations of the United Nations. And that's against the Charter. She brings that out. Very interesting. You do that for me, Amber?
Yep.
Good.
Any questions? Any more questions?
Did you all have lemonades?
Yeah.
I drink some. We've just been so enraptured that it's hard to mentally detach ourselves and drink
Did you
lemonade.
finish all your questions that you had listed on it?
On my arm. I think so.
Did I just tell you the number? Did I tell you the story about the fellow who won the lottery?
No.
That's what you call gallow humor, dark humor. But there's a fellow who is like a survivor, let's say. He's in America for about 50, 60 years. One day he wins the big lottery, the jackpot, like $50 million. Happens, here from time to time.
Rarely.
He takes $5 million and gives it to the Holocaust Museum and $5 million to his favorite causes in Israel and then the Wiesenthal Center and the Red Cross, all his favorite charities. And he shares his newfound wealth with his favorite charities. And then he leaves $1 to that group in Germany that still exists, the old SS Nazi. They gather from time to time to have meetings. Remember, you don't remember Reagan. Do you remember Reagan, President Reagan?
When we were born.
He went to the Bitburg Cemetery in Germany to visit where the SS are buried. And Wiesel came to him and told him, Mr. President,
Why did he do that?
you should be with the victims, not with the perpetrators. He still went there.
Why did he go there?
Because Chancellor Kohl of Germany was just elected and he wanted to show his solidarity with him. Be this as it may, this group of SS, they're still having the old veterans, meetings once in a while. This fellow leaves that SS group $1. So his friend says, "What, are you crazy? Why won't you leave anything to the SS?" He says, "Well, it's only a symbol." Still, he says, leaving money to the people that killed your parents. He says, "I want to tell you something. They gave me my winning number that he played on the lottery."
Oh my God.
Did you get that?
Wow.
He kept playing that number for years and years and years, and finally he won. He said, "They gave me my winning number." Is that interesting?
Actually,
Is that dark humor?
Yeah, there's a Curb Your Enthusiasm. Have you heard of the Larry
Curb Your
King?
Enthusiasm.
There is one.
That was that series on television. Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
you should watch. There's a lot of references to the Holocaust
Yes,
and
I know.
survivors.
And he uses all kinds of vulgarity too.
Yes. he does.
Endless, almost gratuitously.
Yeah. Very politically incorrect.
Yes.
But there is one where he talks.
But that's why I said it's a black humor, dark humor, but it is symbolic there in a way. They
It's really
gave me the
interesting.
number, they gave me the winner.
It's really interesting that you should end with that because the thing that we did on our first day of class was we read this cartoon, and there's this little child sitting next to a man who's obviously a Holocaust survivor, and the child says to the elderly gentleman, "What's that funny tattoo on your arm? Why? That's a really ugly tattoo. Why would anybody ever get just numbers? It's kind of boring." And the
Grandfather.
the older man or the grandfather says, "Oh, it's a reminder of a time when there were no morals in the world and destruction and evil and blah 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 blah." And the little child says, "Oh, so you kept it to remind yourself of these things?" And he said, "No, my dear, I kept it to remind you."
And I get that from time. It's on get it on the
Yeah.
computer.
I've seen that one.
It's called Remembrance, I believe.
Hmm.
Isn't that called? That's
I
what it's
think-
called.
Maybe.
It starts with a cartoon. Yeah, it's very significant. It tells you what he told the child the right thing. Isn't it right? That's what you're talking
Yes.
about.
Mhm.
Perpetuating the memory and care. and passing it on, and from generation in Hebrew.
Lador vador.
Lador. That's where that was coming at. Lador. Lador in Hebrew. Dor means generation. Flo?
Wait, what is la and va? Like,
Well, the is
End.
is
It's
and, and la is from.
okay.
Lador. Vador means end. Ani ve'ata, ani ve'at, meaning I
and you.
and you. At ve'ani. You speak a little Hebrew?
קצת.
קצת. אני למדתי לפני 75 שנה בווינה, אוסטריה.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wondered what happened to you. Where did you?
Doing some paperwork for the office. Never finished. Yeah, because I'm going away, so I have to
Flo,
make
we're
sure.
finished here with these young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
They will not be...
They look so tired, and we've tired them out.
אנחנו דברות.
We spoke. We
You're
spoke.
speaking
We speak
בעברית
בעברית.
ביחד.
אנחנו
דוברות
דוברים.
דוברים.
אנחנו דיברים
דיברים.
בעברית.
You have to
בעברית.
say it in German.
What does that mean?
We're speaking in Hebrew
In
now.
Hebrew.
עכשיו.
עכשיו means now. עכשיו means now, and machar means tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And לפני is before.
Lifnei before.
You said you taught Hebrew
I
before.
learned
You learned Hebrew before when you were living in.
Bevina, Austria, Lifnei before, 75
You can
years
use
ago.
coffee. Would you
75
like to have
years
some
ago.
hot coffee?
Oh, I have. I'm sorry. I'm tired. I've
You look
had a
so
lot of
tired.
work, but of course,
I know, it's tiring.
he has more energy than me.
Me too. Myra was speaking Chinese in the restaurant. I don't know how.
Well, he's a Chinese
I mean,
major.
the waiters come over to him. He speaks Chinese. I don't know how he remembers it all.
He did speak Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
He
I
learned
thought it
that-
was a Japanese restaurant, but I said, "How did you learn Japanese?" He said, "No, I was speaking Chinese." He said, "It's a Japanese restaurant. All Chinese people
By
work
the way,
there."
two entirely different languages, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know.
Like French and
I really can't tell the
French
difference.
and Spanish and Italian and Portuguese are related Romance languages, but you would think in East Asia, Japan and China facing each other, two entirely different languages.
Yeah.
But
In
you're
fact-
a linguist. You speak 6 languages.
Yeah, well, I'm into
Really?
languages. So is
I'm
my
into languages.
Our son is also into. He speaks Spanish. He speaks some German,
It's genetic.
French. He's a French minor and a Chinese major,
That's why he
which
plays
means
Irish
that he
music.
can go to a Chinese restaurant and order in Chinese, you know. But he plays Irish music. Normal, right? Paranormal.
Must be genetic, like that gene.
Oh,
This came from Holland.
Just writing down so
We
we
bought
forget
that
to
when
ask.
we lived in Holland. We bought that in Holland.
It's nice.
Couldn't resist it. It was in a store window. I was walking by.
How'd you get it here?
I couldn't believe the price. I
on a-
just
on a
I gotta buy
container
it. It was
ship.
It was $600. It was crazy.
And you should.
Solid oak.
It's really nice.
I grabbed
The
it.
engraving.
The company Leah was working for paid for everything to be moved back. And
Oh. Can I still borrow your beret?
I bring it to you.
Okay.
I'll bring it, Flo. Don't forget when we go there in November, end of November, with Denise and Andrea and Samantha. We can
do they
bring
know
it.
the date yet? We haven't even
No,
told
they
them.
will
We
let
don't
me
know the date yet.
They will let me
But you
know.
don't know yet
No.
yourself. Okay.
And Tova said she would like when she presents my story, she would like to at one point when it's
Wear your
indicated
beret.
to put on the beret for effect.
Okay.
Okay. He was talking about how he was quite the Frenchman. He wore his beret.
It's Jean Paul. It's always French Jean Paul. I called some company today from the office, and the guy, Corporate Express, to order checkbooks for the doctor, and some guy named Jean Paul answered me.
Jean-Paul?
But didn't seem to be a French accent,
It
isn't
could be from Canada, but Jean-Paul, Jean and then Paul.
No, I didn't ask him to spell it.
But
He
you
just
should
told me
have.
his name was Jean Paul.
Maybe it's John, John then.
He had a heavy accent.
Jean-
Oh, but then it's
It
Jean-Paul.
didn't sound like French.
Jean-Paul, yeah.
Mhm. Leo asks everybody how they spell their name, or he guesses how they spell it. I always do that.
Because you're so good at
Do
spelling.
you know that person yesterday we signed that book at the church?
Mhm.
We were on Sunday we were at the church at not a Universalist, Unitarian Universalist assembly.
They don't call themselves a church.
No, they don't call themselves church. But anyway,
In fact, Myron, when I told our son about it, he says he has a joke for everything, like his father. And he says, "Did you hear what they were burning question marks on these people's lawns instead of burning crosses? They were burning question marks because they have a mixture of religions.
I see.
They're very good
Yeah,
people.
that's
They're really
awesome.
nice. We had a
But
nice experience.
remember when that woman said to me, I said, how do I sign it? She signed it, whatever, Linda Chenoweth, you know? And I said, is that Chenoweth? Yes, she says, you're the first one that ever spelled that correctly.
Because you like words, you like names.
Yeah, I'm into words and names and whatever. That's my hang-up or whatever.
Your forte.
Not a hang-up. I wouldn't call it a hang-up.
Well, it's my,
Another weird thing about you, honey. Asking people to, guessing the spelling of people's names when you
Weird.
introduce to somebody.
weird thing. Huh?
Always want to give them a good kiss.
It's a weird thing, huh?
Why are you
It's a
doing
quirk.
this? Quirk, yeah, it's a quirk.
A quirk, a quirk.
That's the word.
And no, an idiosyncrasy.
Yes, an eccentricity.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Oh well.
Indubitably. Yes.
So what else is happening today?
Tomorrow,
I may go in for a few hours
got
on
my hair
Thursday.
cut in the morning. Then I have a doctor's appointment at 2:30,
Okay, do we have anything on
and then
Thursday?
we have 7 o'clock the library.
Tomorrow?
Yes, I got the books in the back there.
Tomorrow? Or Thursday during the day we have nothing, right? Because I may have to go to work a few hours.
No, Flo, no.
Leo, I had to rush out of the office today to meet your
You
son.
rushed out. What do you mean?
I left
You
a lot
left
of
at
things
5
on.
o'clock. You usually work.
I left a lot of things undone.
When did you leave the office?
quarter after 5. 'cause
Well, you normally leave at 5. Why did you have to rush at
because we're
quarter
going
after
away.
5?
Because we're going away, I had to get a lot of things done before.
We are going away. So
Yeah, remember?
Well, maybe you can take some of the office work to Vienna.
Yeah,
with you.
sure.
I think this is a great way to end.
You know what?
It's normal people.
In that office, I guess what in that office, if they have to order paper clips, they call Flo. Whatever is, it's Flo's business, you know. The simple thing like paper clips. Flo, where do we get paper clips?
Don't listen to him. Everybody knows you buy paper clips in the diaper store. So, I don't know.
I'm just trying to make a
Doctor was
point.
interviewing
That
somebody
office.
for the
In
job.
fact, the doctor told her, Flo, I'll get out of this office. I'll retire when you retire. That's what she told her.
Been there 22 years.
Isn't it a feather in her cap?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to retire?
It was time.
It was time.
In 95, I was 77. I was 70.
Wow, that's still a long.
That's, I guess that's...
Now, not nowadays, but
I mean, I
Well,
didn't
they're saying
retire.
really
In
clean
fact-
up the storefront.
In fact, frankly, after I got out of in the store, I knew I was there 10 to 5, 10 to 4 certain days. Now, you look at my calendar, it's busier than when I was working. Working was routine every day.
Well, you're busier
Now-
than us.
Now I got...
It's all your fault for writing that book.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, that brought some other things
You're
on.
still taping, are you?
And I'm not
Mhm.
complaining.
You're not. Are you really?
And I'm not complaining. I don't complain. I'm just making
You're
a
not,
statement
you're
that is a fact.
alright, turn it off. This is normal.
I got a lot
This is
of.
just plain old talk.
No, he's talking about the book publishing.
Well, it's, yeah, that's what caused a lot of these contacts, and I met some wonderful people, like these people on Sunday at the church, or when I go to schools as students, and it's always a good experience. I mean, I have some 3,000-4,000 letters here from students. I don't know what to do with them. I can't get myself to throw them out.
Yeah.
Because everyone is nice, you know. And there are some of them that are special, that are worth framing. But I can't flow these letters that we have there.
Well, the main letters we have that are beautiful are from the
Yeah, but I
from
didn't-
Sister
you know,
Joan Ower.
That's another thing. I'm speaking about students. what do we do with those letters, Flo? Should we
Oh, no,
go
I
through
was
them
looking at
again
some last night.
and
You
pick
know,
out the best ones and keep them, or should we just, what?
You know, we have some in the file cabinet too.
Yeah,
I
no,
found
we have
yesterday.
You
So-
saw that?
First, when the book first
You
came
saw
out,
that
we were
yesterday?
following them.
I remember your term over Holocausted. I really like
Yeah.
that term.
Yeah, when we
The
go,
term that you use to that sometimes you just get over Holocausted.
Did I?
Yeah.
I mentioned that once or twice here, yeah.
Yeah,
I really-
if we're in the giant food, sometimes and somebody will be approaching you and say, Leah, you're just a man. I want to ask you a
And
question.
then he
Yeah,
says,
that's
I know what
he
they're
says.
gonna-
It's about the Holocaust.
Yeah. But do you appreciate the fact that I feel that way?
Oh, of
sometimes?
course. It's refreshing that
No, I
you're.
think it's great. I think it's a new perspective, that the most honest perspective.
Because it's something I always want to ask a survivor. I would always want to say, is it ever just too much? Do you ever just get sick of being a Holocaust survivor? Don't you want to just be a
Just
retired bookman, you know, and
The Holocaust, yeah.
book
You're-
retailer? And
You're right. You're
It's so
right.
sensationalized, and you.
I'm glad that you just sort of brought it down to earth and you're just like, yes, sometimes it's too much. It's like anything else. Say that I was
Well,
a miracle
Just
baby
a
or
person.
something, and
I
you know, people
appreciate
always.
that, and you will reflect it in your presentation, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the way I feel, and it's no shame, no hesitation about that. It's a burnout. Some people get burnout. Mechanics get burnout. Do you know about a mechanic who got
Is this gonna be a joke?
Probably.
a mechanic was sort of had problems. He went to a psychiatrist. Even mechanics have emotional problems. He went to a psychiatrist. The first question the psychiatrist asked him, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "I'm an automobile mechanic." He says, "Get under the couch."
Well, yeah.
Oh, this is something that we, no, it's still recording. This is something that we were actually debating about, because we couldn't quite remember in the car on the way home, last week, was when you were in Belgium, you trained as an electrician, was that right?
Yeah, I went in the school. It was
A trade school.
it was a trade school for electricians
Did you ever work as an electrician
in Vienna.
in Vienna before you
Yes,
left,
for 6
So-
months.
when you were 17?
Simply because my aim was always to go to Palestine, and it was
Right,
good to
and
learn a
to
trade.
have a
And
trade.
why electrician? Because my uncle Jacob, who left Vienna in 1930, was an electrician.
So when,
And so I figured, well, I might as well be an electrician. I was employed by an electrician for about half a year.
when you were forced to leave school, is
Yes.
that
And another, did I tell you everything about my friend Robert in Vienna?
Hochman?
No, another Robert.
Different Robert?
Robert Patochka. By the way,
He's our present friend.
I didn't hear from him today, but everything is all right. He's picking us up. Robert is the principal now at the school in Vienna where I was enrolled as a
Electrician.
as a student
Wow.
at age whatever 16 and a half or so. Now, listen to this. Robert Patochka in 2002 or 3 took it upon himself to find out, or to try to find, some of the students that were in his class and were Jewish,
That were in the
To
school.
see what happened.
but that
Not
were in
in
the
his
school.
class.
And he found 4 of them. One in New Jersey, one in Florida, one in Israel, and me in Baltimore. And he came here to visit me.
Wow.
He had a friend living in Laurel, a
Nearby.
Viennese woman, Laurel. He came to visit me here, and he invited me to go to his school in Vienna to do a talk to the students. And I tell you, there's another thing. He scheduled the talk for the 25th of October, 2004. And the 25th of October was the day I left Vienna. And was the perfect intro for me to tell the students. What a strange coincidence, Engineer Patochka didn't know that when he gave me that date. That the 25th of October, today, I left Vienna 65 years ago. But since then he has had me back there. And he found us, and now he was in Israel, and he spoke to the other fellow. He says he has to tell me all about it. And through me, he found another fellow. He writes to me, "Would you have known a fellow by the name of Julius Muscatblade?" I said to Flo, "You know what, Flo? Mrs. Friedman, my friend Herbie Friedman, at whose wedding I was the best man, His mother is a
Her maiden name.
maiden name, Muscat Blake.
So I said to him, how would you know Herbie's mother's maiden name? You know, it sounds so weird.
So I
Why
called
would you know
Herbie.
that?
I called Herbie. He was in Florida then. Herbie, what was your cousin's name that you told me about? The one that was deported. He says Julius.
And that was the one
Says Herbie,
Robert
that
knew.
was Julius. Julius was the only one from that school who went to Auschwitz.
The others all survived. All the Jewish kids all survived.
Is that interesting?
These aren't coincidences. These are just Leos.
She thinks I have a knack for these things.
Yeah.
Tova keeps telling me that.
Getting Lucille's book today. That's crazy.
Yeah, he was just saying that.
That is weird.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording now, but I just want to say on tape.
You want to say what?
I just wanted to say we can't thank you enough. I think just from all three of us. I can't
Thank you.
speak for the three of us, but this has been such an experience.
Thank
we can't
you.
even.
I thank you because you made the effort. You worked hard. You applied yourself to the nth degree. I appreciate that. Goes both ways.
I found this very inspirational, and it really has changed me. And I really want to read more about Judaism and the Holocaust. It's been a very.
You might even convert.
I am Jewish.
You know why I'm saying that?
Yeah.
Because that fellow that invited me to come to speak to a college in South Carolina, he was a student at John Carroll Catholic School in Bel Air. And he said the same thing when he called me. When I heard you talk, I read the book. I read the book about other books on the Holocaust. Then I read books on Judaism. Mr.
But I'm
Bretholz,
Jewish.
I just converted to Judaism.
I said, why are you crazy? Why you have to do that?
I said, are you crazy? Don't you have enough problems being a Catholic? He left, and he's getting married to a Jewish girl, and he's not going to be bar mitzvah. And his rabbi told him that he's a better student in Hebrew than some of the Jewish students.
Of course, because
Eric
he
Jaycock.
wants to.
Eric Jaycock. I didn't tell you that? Hey, Jaycock. Jaycock. Yes. J. EJ. Go in the computer. EJ.
Just look at all this
Isn't that
influence you
interesting?
have.
John Carroll. His parents sent him to a Catholic school, paid tuition. It's a private school, and then he converts.
But
they
they're nice
say,
people.
he says, how about your parents? They say, whatever makes me happy. He's fine with them. They're going to be at his bar mitzvah. He's not 21 and is becoming bar mitzvah down in South Carolina. Went down to speak to his college in Conway, South Carolina, near Myrtle Beach. In April we
In
went
all
there.
the years Leo was speaking to students, that's the only one who ever did such a thing. I
Did
mean,
that.
we're
I
not
said,
out to convert
This is not,
anybody.
this is not my,
No, I know you're no missionary, but
this
I'm,
is not my aim. My aim
that's
is not
I'm,
to...
but that's the.
Exactly, I was
But if
upset
he-
about
I
it.
If
didn't
you
read it that way.
If he reacted that way, that's his business.
Yeah, but
But
I remember you said, I hope his parents don't think I had anything to do with that.
Okay, I am Jewish. I think
Guess
He
what?
did that on his
You
own.
know, guess what? You know who else thought I had something to do with it?
Yeah.
Margaret,
Oh, Bonnie's mother, yeah.
Margaret Wirtz, Barney's
Well,
mother.
that was...
A young woman who worked for me in my bookstore before we went to Amsterdam. She converted to Judaism.
I think it's good that you don't want people to.
No,
I
no.
think that's.
No, you
great.
stay
No,
what
he
you
doesn't.
are.
I think
I
that's
prefer to have a friend that is not Jewish, because that shows that understanding. We don't need to,
Great. All right, I like
to
it.
convert people.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's an honor when they do, but on their own, but we don't go out.
If you
we're not
find
proselytized.
something inspirational in Judaism that you didn't find in your own religion, so be it.
Yeah.
But there's also Jews who convert also to other religions. But that's the individual decision. But that's not my aim.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it too much.
I meant embracing the culture more, because I don't. That's what I meant.
Your culture.
Yes.
Jenny wants to become a cultural Jew like Michael Oleska.
Oh, like Michael, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I told you this young woman that just started in our office today. It was her first day. And I told her I'd like to see everything under control before I go overseas. She said, "Oh, you're going overseas? Are you a missionary?"
You're a missionary of sorts,
Not
but
quite.
not
Not
a
quite.
religious missionary.
Yeah.
So, alles in Ordnung?
Ja,
Geht's gut?
geht's sehr gut.
Ja? Alles geht sehr gut?
Vielen Dank.
Nichts zu danken. Nichts zu danken. Nichts zu danken.
Thank you for it.